truth is the most convincing story that maps onto reality, and that's why the central narrative is falling apart.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
We must see the central narrative for the fiction that it is. We are Americans.
While elections are sometimes messy, this was a secure election.
The founders began the fight for human liberty and self-governance, and it's up to us to finish the job.
I'll tell you what, we are in a truth emergency right now.
This is the end game.
Immensely seductive. Quite sure he's right. Obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
Anyone who understands the roller coaster we've been on these past few years knows we haven't reached the end yet, and there may still be hard times to come. And as we add $1 trillion to the national debt every 100 days, we could be headed for some shaky financial times. If you're like me, you're figuring out how to diversify and make sure some seeds are planted for whatever may come. And that's one of the many reasons I think Bitcoin is part of our future. But it's not only about money. Bitcoin looks to be a critical part of the next generation of technology, communications, energy, verification, and even national defense. I'd encourage everyone to do their research and do it now. And if you're convinced of the likelihood that Bitcoin is an essential part of our future, then you'll need an on-ramp. I recommend River. River empowers you to grow your portfolio without any unwanted surprises and eliminates third-party custodians, putting you in control of your assets. Open an account with no minimum purchase requirement. You can get your Bitcoin journey started with just $1. Visit partner.river.com/reasonable to create your River account today. That's partner.river.com/reasonable. Now, I know that many of you out there understand the need to diversify assets, or maybe you're looking to protect your retirement savings, but you're not quite there yet on Bitcoin. And you feel better about precious metals? I get that too. I think going in multiple directions is wise, and I do that myself. And when it comes to buying precious metals, you want to be working with a good company. And that's why I've partnered with Goldco. Goldco is a 6-time Inc. 5000 winner, 2022 Company of the Year, and they've helped people like you and me place over $2 billion in gold and silver. And I have gotten silver from Goldco. And right now they're offering my supporters up to $10,000 in bonus silver while supplies last. Don't pass this offer up. Go to reasonablegold.com now. This is your opportunity to protect you and your family from an out-of-control government before it's too late. So don't wait a second longer. Take action today. Click on the link in the podcast notes or go to reasonablegold.com now and get your free gold kit, your free IRA kit. You'll be glad you did. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday live stream. It is Wednesday, October 9th, the 1,358th day of dystopia. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. So quite a week we have, at least in the mainstream narrative. Kamala Harris has finally started doing interviews. She went from doing no interviews or having interviews with a chaperone to showing up on every trendy show she can find. Just this week, she went on that ridiculous, like, delusional liberal feminist podcast, Call Her Daddy. She's been on The View. She went on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. She went on Howard Stern. And 60 Minutes. And what else do we have? I feel like that's not even it. She's getting herself out there. Kamala Harris, never a woman known to be putting herself out there. I want to go through a couple of these clips because it's unbelievable. That is the sort of thing, if we were in a real campaign, and we are not, but if we were, we would be told that this is a sign that Kamala and her people know that Kamala is behind. She has had this radical shift in strategy. They would be running stories about how they've determined that the country simply doesn't know her well enough, and they really want to get her out there so people can better understand how she is and who she is. But that's already in conflict of what they've been portraying for this entire time. They give her these massive fake rallies. They say she won a debate where she looked like a moron and didn't answer questions and got stomped on by Trump in ways that the viewers at home understand, even if the people on TV don't understand. So they've tried to portray her as someone who's really doing well and is well liked, and people know about her, and they think that she's a fantastic prosecutor and all this nonsense. They would be saying people don't know Kamala Harris. What we need to do is let them know Kamala Harris. It should be obvious that this was the week they planned to send her out on TV and make her look important and like she's got things under control. And it just so happens that we're doing round-the-clock fear porn all day, every day now, whether it's about a very natural disaster or a very real war in the Middle East. We get nonstop fear porn. And of all weeks, this is the week that they are sending Kamala Harris out onto all of these ridiculous television shows to repeat the same things over and over and cackle. It's really embarrassing. But of course, this is not a real election. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir often when I'm talking about these things. But let's go through a few of these clips with the understanding that if all of this was real and Kamala Harris, as a member of the global regime, was a powerful politician, and Joe Biden was, and this deep state, this whole apparatus has all of these things under control, then these sorts of clips would probably never see the light of day. And let's start with this one. I think this is from the 60 Minutes interview. What you're about to see is the version that they showed, that they sent out early on their socials and whatnot, the teaser version, and then we get the full version, and you can decide for yourself whether or not you think this is really, really embarrassing for the candidate who just also happens to be the vice president. It's so silly. Oh, gosh.
That Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Okay. That second part wasn't even in the first part. The end of her answer in that full answer, the actual answer up on top. Let's listen to it one more time. It really is amazing.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems.
What are you supposed to make of that? I'm trying to wrap my head around what she just said. I think she said Many of our moves were prompted. Wait, no, can we listen to it one more time? I hope you guys don't get too upset. It's so crazy.
That Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Oh, wait, sorry. I want to go all the way back. Why wouldn't it let me go all the way? Oh, there we are. There we are. Let's just go right to her answer.
The work that we have done has resulted in a number of...
The work that we have done has resulted. Okay? So they did work. Now she's about to present the conclusion of that work.
Movements in that region by Israel that were...
The conclusion of that work was that there were multiple movements by Israel.
Very much prompted by or a result of.
Those movements by Israel were very much prompted by or a result of.
Many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
She did the work. It achieved this conclusion. What was the conclusion? Israel did multiple things that were prompted by or a result of that work they did based on their advocacy for what needs to happen in the region. Wow, man. I mean, I guess there's a way to make that into a sensible answer, and it might be an honest answer on her part, and that might be the most careful way she could possibly avoid answering that question in any way that wouldn't make the world hate her more than they do. She essentially said that she encouraged Israel to take actions they wouldn't have otherwise taken on the basis of what they believe needs to happen in that region. So I guess that she is advertising to her normal audience of global elites, global communists, people who are involved in that global regime project. Maybe she's saying, hey, you know, we actually, through the work that we did, we got Israel to change course on a couple of things based on what you want for that region. Sounds like she's selling herself. I mean, that was a mouthful of otherwise nonsense. And maybe I'm giving her too much credit. If you said, hey, man, you're giving her too much credit, I would probably be like, yep, you are right. That is not a smart lady. But at the same time, they are on a different wavelength. They're on a different program than we are. We are accustomed to hearing politicians. We believe that politicians are supposed to tell us things so that we think certain things. We're their audience because they need our votes. They don't need our votes. They don't need our votes. They don't care about our votes. They don't care about our voice. That's why they're trying to censor us. They can't possibly care about our votes if they don't care about our voices. If they're willing to silence us, if they're willing to censor us, if they are willing to just blatantly violate the First Amendment to the point where you just have to assume that for all intents and purposes, it does not exist. They certainly don't care about our votes. They're not asking for our votes. They are advertising themselves to the people who put them in place and make them wealthy beyond your and my imagination. The idea that someone like Kamala Harris will never want for anything for the rest of her life. It's kind of incredible, isn't it? What has she done? I mean, unless she is the most impressive secret agent of all time, then she got into politics by blowing Willie Brown. And California's stolen elections continued to promote her, which those stolen elections, which the system will do with anyone who serves the system well. That's her only job. Her job's not to prosecute cases for the state of California as AG. Her job's to keep the system moving. Do what she's told. They'll put the people in there who can take care of that kind of stuff. Those people will all take care of that for you. You just worry about shaking some hands, giving that cackle, the occasional blowjob. Just let us take care of the politics. She rode that all the way to senator. She rode that all the way to the fake vice president. But maybe it was just all a genius operation. And hey, man, maybe the blowjob thing is just misinformation. I guess anything's possible. But that woman sounds like an idiot. I mean, I can't try any harder to give Kamala Harris the benefit of the doubt than I did right there. I suppose I could have been less crass about how many people she's been blowing. But beyond that, I think I was very fair. I give myself a 9 out of 10. Let's continue. So Kamala also went and appeared on The View to talk to just the worst ladies in all the world.
If anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Okay. We're going to have to watch that one more time as well. So Sunny Hostin, I think, is the name of the woman who just asked her that question. This is why we're going to watch it again. Watch this. She reads the question off her paper.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
Well, if anything. That was like her brain working on its normal cycle, trying to figure out what the hell is going on here. And then she reads off the paper. You need to ask Kamala Harris, would she have done anything different than Joe Biden? And she says,
there is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had.
So there's nothing that she would have done differently than Joe Biden, which is interesting because at many times during this campaign, she has tried to separate herself. In fact, she's flying around on Air Force One today, it looks like. It says United States of America. It's the big plane, the light blue and white one. And apparently, I saw this right before I got on. Jack Posobiec was saying that they are on, I'll just share the screen with you here. They were apparently on the same tarmac together. Their planes are both in Scranton, Pennsylvania, home of old Scranton Joe Biden, breaking Kamala Harris and Trump. This is not breaking. Poso, come on, man. Kamala Harris and Trump are both on the same runway together in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Kamala just ran away from him, per Trump campaign official. Stephen Chung posted that lovely video there. So Kamala Harris is pretending to be president, or fake president, at least. She usurped the Democrat nomination. I don't think anybody gave Joe Biden a choice. I mean, again, you can take this in two minds. It's crazy to think back. I said that, I think on January 21st, 2021 of this podcast, after they went and showed us the fake inauguration. I was like, hey, man, we're going to have to go in two directions on this. We're going to have to pretend that all of this is real. And we're also going to have to know that behind all of that, something else is clearly going on. And I think that I've stuck to that pretty well over the last 3.5+ years. And I think that many of you are totally capable of doing that. And that's kind of something that we all in this community do together, because it's the only way to make sense of any of this. And to try to only choose one of those paths is to detach from what's actually happening in the world. There are two things happening, and they are layered on top of one another. The denial of one is to miss half of what's going on. And everybody in mainstream media does that. Everybody in the party of false decorum does that because they have to. They can't admit the other things going on because those aren't acceptable viewpoints. If anyone knows you think those things, you'll be kicked out of the party of false decorum. And so a lot of people just stay only over there. And then there are some people who stay only going down rabbit holes, and they are insanely stressed out because they know that that reality is still working around them and they can feel the pressure of it and they're scared by it. Man, it is I guess there's no better word for it. Apologies, earmuffs if the kids are in the car, but there's no better word for it than mindfuck. And I understand that that's very frustrating for people. It's very uncomfortable. It's not something that anybody wants to go through with or go through, but it's real, man. So She's out there flying around on Air Force One, pretending to be president, having usurped the Democrat nomination in a fake election, in a fake campaign for a fake election, following a fake presidency and a fake vice presidency. Absolutely wild. She goes on. She's been trying to differentiate herself from Joe Biden this whole time because the country, by and large, is absolutely appalled at what they have seen from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Doesn't mean they like Trump. Just means that to the extent they follow any of this at all and have some awareness and aren't complete and total degenerates or liars, you're just utterly ignorant and detached from reality. To the extent that they're not that, normal people are appalled at what they have seen from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. There are a lot of normal people out there. They might not be on our wavelength. They might not be full on MAGA, but there's a lot of normal people out there who know something is wrong. And so they see Kamala Harris come on The View after trying to separate herself and differentiate herself and go down and stand in front of a vice presidential seal and be on a plane with a vice presidential seal. She's taking care of the hurricane victims. She's doing all this stuff. Nobody believes it. She goes on The View after having tried to make herself look presidential and very, very serious. And she says there's nothing she would have changed about Joe Biden. Wouldn't have done anything differently. That's pretty mind-blowing. So today, now both the fake president and the fake vice president are involved in hold on. Before we get to that. So yesterday, while Kamala was on The View, Joe Biden went and scheduled himself a press conference. He did this last week too. Kamala went down, I think she was in northwestern Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. And she went outside to have a little photo op in front of some wreckage. And Joe Biden went and started his first ever press conference from the White House briefing room. First ever. In nearly 4 years of being fake president, he never once took questions in the White House press briefing room. Donald Trump was there doing a press conference almost every day throughout that entire middle chunk of 2020 when we were pretending the whole world was going to end and that people were going to drop dead in the streets if we didn't stand 6 feet away from each other in the grocery store. He was out there every day telling the truth. I guess to the extent that he was able. That's how we can hope that went. He certainly told more truth than everybody on the mainstream media. And all the people who are his detractors about how he handled COVID, those people certainly aren't in touch with the sort of truth that Donald Trump is, nor can they tell truth in the way that Donald Trump can, because Donald Trump is trying to do something very difficult, which is to be honest about what's happening and also realistic about what needs to be said and what needs not to be said in order to keep things on track. And again, that is a charitable interpretation that is open to reevaluation, certainly in a few months, depending on how these next few months progress. At some point, if you don't consider that that we might have gotten something wrong at the higher levels, I don't know what to tell you about that. We should all have the intellectual humility to understand that we might still be wrong about something important. But otherwise, we're talking about people who don't have an inclination in any situation to tell the truth. And that is why they lie so often. Their world is built on lies. The regime is built on lies. It always will crumble unless they can seize total and complete power. And it doesn't seem like they're willing to do what's necessary to do that. And ultimately, I'm not sure that would work because that sort of thing would wake the people up immediately, which is why they're trying to outsource all of that work and all of those atrocities to the machine. They want the AI to decide that sort of thing. They want the robot dogs and the machines to carry out the atrocities that they are unwilling to carry out for themselves. And that is why they're creating that world so that someone other than them can keep us in line. They will only make the big decisions at the top and they will have their areas of the world. It'll be a lot like, did you ever see that movie Elysium? It's really not very good, which is why I haven't chosen it for Story Hour, but maybe at some point we will have to. But that's kind of the vision. That's why they have all those, those wildlife refuge areas throughout the country. They are keeping that land for themselves for later. Let's see. So Joe Biden did a press conference while Kamala was on The View. And here's some of that.
Political figures sharing misinformation during this time.
Past his prologue is real. But the fact of the matter is, I think we have, I've been able to contact all the governors. They are sticking up for what they've asked for. They're pointing out that they're satisfied with everything they're getting. But I can't speak for others on the internet. And I mean, just look, those who do it to try to damage the administration. Well, we can take care of ourselves. But it misleads people. It puts people in circumstances where they panic, where they really, really, really worry. They think they're not being taken care of. And it really is, it's going to sound, and use an old phrase, it's un-American. It really is. People are scared to death. People know their lives are at stake. All that they've worked for, all that they own, all that they value. And it's just, anyway.
There he is, decent old Joe Biden. Joe Biden, the decent man. That's Scranton Joe right there, the decent family man. You might remember that the adults are back in the room. So all the claims of things going wrong down in North Carolina and the government not responding, those are all conspiracy theories on the internet. It's just people trying to hurt the administration. And of course, they can take care of themselves. But he's still going to let the country know that it's not the illegitimate and fake Biden-Harris administration that's failing to respond to these problems. That's all a conspiracy theory. Man, I don't know what he thinks. Assuming that we're getting good information. I mean, some of the people in the community, I have people in my chat who I have every reason to believe are real good people who have been there for a year. They're affected by the storms in North Carolina. One of the guys was rebuilding a road with the people in his community this week. And hey, man, maybe we are seeing an example of the fact that the federal government, maybe DHS, just saying, at some point, elements of the federal government are going to be dissolved. And to suggest that none of that has happened at all, it could just be a TV show, that any of this is even relevant at all anymore. Donald Trump won in 2020 by a lot. Joe Biden did not receive 81 million real lawful American votes. He was not properly certified. He was not properly inaugurated. He has not been a real president for one single day in the history of the world and the history of Joe Biden or whoever is playing Joe Biden at this point. I don't know, man. Donald Trump has said a lot of things over the years. Those things have been widely reported in mass media and people just ignore them. They're like, well, that was an isolated incident. The media debunked it. We all moved on. It can't be true. Said a lot of things over the years. Unprecedented fraud requires an unprecedented cure. Talked about certain elements of the Constitution being suspended in times of war, times of emergency. Do we have those? Yes, we sure do. Did he declare an insurrection based on the fact that the country had been usurped and hand in hand with foreign entities was being taken over? That Americans were being framed for that? The idea that he did nothing and he's just hung around with this level of popularity that has only grown since 2020, despite being trashed in every way imaginable, his supporters being persecuted and prosecuted simply for supporting him. Despite all of that, the fake indictments, everything, he is more popular than he ever was. So that is a well-run info op. It is also suggestive that a lot of people liked Donald Trump before 2021. more than enough to have legitimately elected him president. He still seems to have the mandate. They have metrics on that I certainly don't have access to. But does the federal government, insofar as there is one being run by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, do they have the capacity to respond? I would suggest that maybe they don't. I don't know. We're gonna find out so many things, I feel like, over the course of the next year or so that really shock us. And, some of them are going to be bad, of course, but I think a lot of them will be good. I think a lot of people will look at it and say, man, all right, finally, that makes sense. And I don't know, how do you react when you have been tricked and it turns out in your own best interest? In fact, you know what? There is a scene in a movie that I absolutely love that addresses this exact dynamic. And I think that this is going to be extremely relevant in our future. And it's going to be, I think, upsetting for a lot of people. And I think it's going to be upsetting to watch. But it's going to be something that happens regardless. It's one of those things. People say nothing can stop what is coming. I have come to enjoy joking about some of that phrase, not because I think it's stupid. I think it's entirely accurate. And I think that phrase is a blessing in many ways because it clarifies something important. And I think that maybe people have clung to it too much for faith, but there's a lot of ways that nothing can stop what is coming. There's a lot of things that nothing can stop from coming. This is one of those things. This is from V for Vendetta. The scene is referred to on YouTube as Evie Reborn. So if you ever want to find this ever again, it's EVEY Reborn. Here we go. Actually, let me do one more thing before we. This is the hold for processing moment. I don't want to say that. I need to find something different to say. I don't like saying catchphrases that other people use.
Hello, Evie.
Yeah.
Now, forgive me for just a moment. I should preface that if you are not familiar with this movie, Natalie Portman's character, Evie, was just trapped in a cell in very poor conditions for quite a long time and had an exchange that she believed to be real, passing notes and whatnot. These memories, she went through all sorts of change and awakening, being degraded to her absolute lowest moment. So she is emerging from that now. Apologies.
It was you.
Yeah.
That wasn't real. It's Gordon.
I'm sorry, but Mr. Dietrich's dead. I thought they'd arrest him, but when they found a Quran in his house, they had him executed. Fortunately, I got to you before they did.
You got to me. You did this to me. You cut my hair. You tortured me. You tortured me. Why?
You said you wanted to live without fear. I wish there'd been an easier way, but there wasn't.
Oh my God.
I know you may never forgive me, but nor will you ever understand how hard it was for me to do what I did. Every day I saw in myself everything you see in me now. Every day I wanted to end it, but each time you refused to give in. I knew I couldn't.
You're sick. You're evil.
You could have ended it, Evie. You could have given in, but you didn't. Why?
Leave me alone. I hate you.
That's it! See, at first, I thought it was hate, too. Hate was all I knew. It built my world, imprisoned me, taught me how to eat, how to drink, how to breathe. I thought I'd die with all the hate in my veins. But then something happened. It happened to me, just as it happened to you.
Shut up! I don't want to hear your lies.
Your own father said that artists use lies to tell the truth.
Yes, I created a lie. But because you believed it, you found something true about yourself.
No.
What was true in that cell is just as true now. What you felt in there has nothing to do with me.
I can't feel anything anymore.
Don't run from it, Evie. You've been running all your life.
Listen to me, Evie. This may be the most important moment of your life. Come next to it.
They took your parents from you.
They took your brother from you. They put you in a cell and took everything they could take, except your life. And you believed that was all there was, didn't you? The only thing you had left was your life, but it wasn't, was it?
You found something else. In that cell, you found something that mattered more to you in life.
Because when they threatened to kill you unless you gave them what they wanted, you told them you'd rather die.
You faced your death, Evie.
You were calm. You were still. Try to feel now what you felt then.
I felt.
Yes.
I'm dizzy. I need air. Please. I need to be outside.
There's a lift. It'll take us to the roof.
Got us in the rain.
Man, what a scene. Honestly, that is nails it. You know, I mean, if you've had an experience similar to that's the dynamic right there. I mean, usually it doesn't look like that, and you're not staring into the face of a man wearing a weird mask. But yeah, that's it. Such a good scene. That sort of thing is going to happen to people. That sort of thing is happening to people. That sort of thing was happening all throughout 2020, and it's been happening the last few years everywhere. Many of us know people who have gone through that. Many of us know people who have gotten close to that and continue to avoid it at absolutely all costs. And the unfortunate thing for them, too, is nothing can stop it. It's coming. It's coming. And it's going to keep coming around again for all of us who have gone through it, too. And that's all right, man. I guess that's what you have to do to reach the next plane and the next plane and the next. And maybe that's how you shed the skin of your past. I don't know. But, I mean, I'm sure it's coming around for me again. So, hey. What are you going to do? You can't escape it. You can't avoid it. And why would you even want to? Because it's the only way that you can actually grow your way through and out of all of this. Okay, so back to Kamala. Looking very, very, very important in her presidential motif, her SEALs, her plane, her taking care of business. She hasn't really taken care of any business for the last 3.5+ years. She went over and they had her try to negotiate the Russia-Ukraine conflict and then started it 2 days later. She said a big country is attacking a little country, and that's not fair. They had her fix immigration. She was the border czar. She went on down to the Golden Triangle and talked about how it was all just climate change. Is she smart? Eric Weinstein says she's smart, and he's the smartest guy in the world, so I guess she must be. Isn't it always amazing how, sorry to tangent again, if you are very embedded in the party of false decorum, as I was, if you are embedded in a particularly elitist segment of the party of false decorum, as I was, then you watch people attribute to all these other people a bunch of qualities they don't have. And I did this. If you're friends with someone important and someone asks, oh, how is that guy? You're like, oh man, he's the best. Smart guy, super successful. He could be a total scumbag, but if he's on your level or above in the party of false decorum, well, not necessarily your level, because maybe you just squash those people and maybe it's worth it. But above, and you know that you can't afford to offend that person, well, you're going to say all sorts of nice things. Not that they deserve to have those nice things said. Maybe they're not very good people. Maybe they're not all that successful and they just got some money from their parents or, won some bullshit lawsuit or something. Who knows? But there's a lot of times where the people don't deserve the compliments. People deserve compliments because they're actually good, and you know they're actually good, and it's a reflection of character on a person, whether or not they're willing to be honest in their assessments of other people. And by the way, honesty includes, you know what? I'm not a big fan of that guy, but I don't want to say anything bad. So, and that's enough, right? You don't owe anybody explanations. Oh, man. I don't know how someone like Eric Weinstein could actually believe that Kamala Harris is smart unless he's privy to a whole lot of information that he's unwilling to share. And he didn't share additional information. He just said, oh, she's much more clever than people give her credit for. Okay, maybe. Or maybe she's just willing to do absolutely whatever she's told all the time and let people use her in whatever ways. She's Indian, now she's black. She's a communist. Now she's a vicious prosecutor. People just give her different identities. She represents all of them. Different viewpoints. She represents all of them. She's an intellectual and spiritual whore. Well, what else can you say, right? And this isn't about her being a woman. There are plenty of men this way. I would describe Joe Biden the same way. I would describe Barack Obama the same way. Any man, I would describe Michelle Obama the same way. So that's yesterday. That's yesterday. She's very, very important. She wants to separate herself from Joe Biden, and then they set up a TV appearance where a scripted question is asked of her, and Kamala gives her scripted answer that she and Joe Biden are still on the same page. Joe Biden schedules his press conference at the same time she's on The View. Joe's out there trying to look presidential. There are all sorts of reports. Well, maybe I shouldn't say all sorts. Jack Posobiec, with his inside sources, reports that there's like they're on the verge of fisticuffs in the quote unquote White House now between Joe and Kamala. They just their teams are going at it now. Poso is an information operator, okay? Good or bad, doesn't matter. I find him at least somewhat entertaining it when he's not stealing my ideas. In fact, you know what? I find him more entertaining when he is stealing my ideas. I don't have a problem with them. Other people do. Most of that is from the Q posts. I get it, guys. I get it. I just don't understand why anyone thinks that their personal interpretation of the Q posts or even the community's interpretation of the Q posts is some hard and fast fact about the world. You don't even know that you're interpreting the post right. And then we can go into the issues beyond that. And I wrote 25,000 words on the Q operation. I think it's a fantastic information operation. I think it has been one of the catalysts of the awakening. I have nothing bad to say about the operation overall. It's encouraged people to seek out information they would have never found out otherwise, put things to get together in a way they never would have. I think all of that is brilliant. At the same time, I don't think it is something that we put our faith in a Q post, which is really just us putting our faith in an interpretation of a Q post. We still have to judge for ourselves beyond that. And we have to consider that maybe the interpretation of the Q post that would give us an explanation for a situation might not be the right explanation. Like the fact that things match up doesn't mean that we have fully discerned a dynamic or a person or a situation, whatever it is still on us to get those things right and to be understanding them in a way that will make sense to us, in a way that is actionable for us in our lives. And if the issue doesn't touch us at all, then fine, you keep an open mind about it. You don't need to make a decision. Why make a decision? You should only make a decision when you have to make a decision. Otherwise, you just keep getting information and watch and observe and try to analyze that information rationally and objectively. And then eventually you have to make a decision. And at that point, you've done your homework and you've observed and you've tried to understand your own biases. And at that point, maybe you make a better decision. Let's continue. This post I labeled little desks. And for those just listening, there's no sound in this portion of the video. I thought that there was some, maybe there's not. So what you're seeing is the White House set across the street in the Eisenhower Executive Office building, or at least that's where we've been led to believe it is. They are on a stage in an auditorium, and they have fake walls set up. One of those walls has an array of screens, and they are doing basically the parallel to the COVID press conferences from back in 2021. And I don't know if they kept doing this in 2022, but the fake president, Joe Biden, is calling in to all of these people to hold a hurricane briefing. Status update, hurricane briefing, it says on the top of the wall of screens. And so a bunch of people are going to talk about the hurricane with the fake president, and he is going to pretend that he is doing his job. Where are they filming this? Why isn't this in the Situation Room of the White House, for instance? Why? Why is it across the street? Why is there an additional fake White House down the street the other direction that is now a museum? We covered that on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. If you're hearing about that for the first time and you missed that episode, go back and listen to the episode, or I can point out and highlight the article for you if you hit me on Telegram. But fake White House. There's another fake White House down the street. Who knows how many other fake White Houses there are? It's not a conspiracy theory to wonder that. It's not a conspiracy theory to look at this and say, that's a fake White House. It is a fake White House. This isn't modeled to look like any room in the White House, which is what was even stranger about it. Although maybe that kept it from, that idea of the uncanny valley. Maybe if they had arranged it to look like a room in the White House, that would have prompted even more, quote unquote, conspiracy theories. But they did that as well. They already filmed at least one scene in a fake Oval Office. I can't imagine they filmed any scenes in the real Oval Office. But honestly, who gives a shit about the real Oval Office at this point? The entire federal government has been disgraced, in my opinion. If you don't agree with that, that's fine. You can want all of these buildings to be revived and renewed and reused again. I don't see any purpose for that. But hey, man, different strokes for different folks. People get nostalgic about a history, even though we've been lied to about that history. I don't have that nostalgia because of those lies. So it's all good, though. I could go either way. If Trump says, hey, we're going to use the old White House, I'll be like, what a lovely White House that is. I hope you can somehow fumigate it or something.
We really got to watch those areas and those communities. So it takes quite a while for that water to drain.
Okay. So what we are looking at right now is that wall of screens. There are 6 people, all of them connected to federal agencies. I was going to say 6 retards. That's not polite because some of these people might not be retarded. But I have no reason to believe that. I also have no reason to believe that they're not communists. Although, wait, see, here's a tough one. The commandant, an admiral in the U.S. Coast Guard, who is a woman, is on this screen. So, I don't know. I guess we can hope that she is not retarded or a communist. That is, oh, man, I don't know. I don't know if I can go that far. I'm going to have to assume that she is a retarded communist. But hey, Linda, no disrespect intended. It's just that you do happen to be on a screen in a fake White House, sharing that screen with a fake vice president and a fake Department of Homeland Security secretary who is definitely a retard and a communist, as is the fake vice president. And you're talking to a fake president. So, hard to give the benefit of the doubt in that situation, but maybe you are briefing all of these people with the correct information, and then they will abuse all of this, and this will be down on the record so that we have a visual record of it. I'm trying to be as fair as I can. What happens at the beginning of this video is that Kamala Harris covers up her mouth and says, this is a live broadcast. Okay, it's tough to catch. And Johnny MAGA on Twitter posted this, saying that her team is giving her questions to ask, and she's letting them know that this is a live broadcast. She didn't want her mouth moving to be on camera. So she covers her mouth with her hand and then says, live broadcast. Let's start it from the top again.
Flood. We really got to watch those areas and those communities. So it takes quite a while for that water to drain.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Ken, I have a question for you. You mentioned words matter, and I know there is a lot of media following this briefing.
Flood.
That's pretty conclusive as far as I'm concerned. Her hands raised to her mouth. She says live broadcast, and then she waits, trying to figure out what's going on until no one's talking, and then she asks the question she was told to ask. That is the sort of scene that makes you think the entire thing is scripted by all 6 of these people. Let's watch it one more time.
We really got to watch those areas and those communities. So it takes quite a while for that water to drain.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Ken, I have a question for you. You mentioned...
is Kamala leading the meeting? Are they all just quiet, waiting for Kamala to speak? Maybe. So things are very real at the White House. That's not the real White House, of course. Things are very real at the fake White House. We have a fake president and a fake vice president. And we're going to go in just a second through a clip of a Donald Trump interview with the comedian Andrew Schultz. And Donald Trump in that clip says, if we had a real president. We'll get there in just a second. But is he just using a euphemism again? Do we just always say it's a euphemism whenever Trump says things like that? Because that's what the normies out there say. That's what we are told by the people on the Daily Weimar. That's what I'm calling them now, by the way, the Daily Weimar. They're the biggest producers of trans content in the world. So what am I supposed to call them? The Daily Weimar. And the Blaze and those other networks, they tell us, oh, these are just euphemisms. Trump is just making a joke. He's just exaggerating. That's his New York style of speaking. Maybe. Or maybe he understands that Joe Biden's not a real president. As someone who's made that argument every day of this entire period, I would just say he knows that Joe Biden's not a real president, and he's saying it over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And people are like, oh, no, that can't be true. That's just a euphemism. If that was true, how do you explain all these other things? And that is how people think that truth should be discerned in the world, in any world. As soon as you say something that they don't understand, well, then how can this other thing be true? Well, A, I don't know. B, I don't accept that the thing you're saying is true. How could we see them every day on television being president and vice president? Well, that's not that hard a question to answer, right? They could just film all this and show it to you all as a daily soap opera that you just so happen to think is real. That is entirely possible. And people are like, no, that's not possible. Yeah, man, that's possible. That is 100% possible. And I don't even understand what the point in denying that is. You're information gatekeeping yourself. You are making sure not to figure out if you might be wrong about one of the most important things in our country to understand right now. Because if you understand that, you can't possibly think that we're having a real election. And then as soon as you realize we're not having a real election and that elections are rigged and stolen and always have been, you can just be like, well, wait a second. Why am I groveling and trembling in fear over this election that is not real? There's going to be a psyop that happens on 11/5. And remember the 5th of November, we just looked at a scene from V for Vendetta that prominently features that poem. So it's entirely possible that you have just been shown a television show your entire life about what our country is. And your education at state-funded and state-sponsored schools leads you to believe that's how it is. And you're like, I went to private schools and a private college. Well, I went to a public school and a private college, and I can tell you that they both receive government money. I mean, so what's the difference, right? And they both convince their students of the underlying truth of the central narrative. And occasionally, I guess you could probably find college professors who will attempt to work against the grain, and then they are shunned and shamed and silenced. What do we think this is? Everything on the television is geared to convince you of the truth of the underlying truth of the false reality. And our schooling does the exact same thing. And then if the government has enough influence and enough power, or it can keep people cowed enough that they can implement whatever policies they want in your business, in any business you go to, of course, all the big corporate chain stores, in what part of your life is that projection not on, not present, not always active? How long does that cycle have to go on with utter fakery before it becomes the only reality that people know, and then they confidently communicate it to not only each other, but their progeny? I would suggest to you that that can happen in a matter of a few generations, and I would suggest to you that we have been through countless cycles of that happening. And here we are today. And so if you're not prepared to reject all this stuff, I don't know what we could possibly still be doing. What do you need to be shown to make you reject these things? And just in case it's these things, I guess I'm going to show them to you. Let's look at a few more videos here to see just how far into this false reality we are. This, we are told, comes from some official source. It just keeps going around on the internet. This is supposedly, wait, does it have, here, let's see. Let's see what this watermark is. I don't know. It looks like an E and an O there at the end. I'm not sure exactly where this is from. But this went around the internet yesterday. This is supposedly a live look from the International Space Station at Hurricane Milton. which is, I don't know, spinning somewhere. The world is rotating on its axis, of course, as the International Space Station remains in perfect orbit, observing this blue marble against a totally black backdrop with absolutely no stars. And we've been explained that that's just not how it works. You guys who don't know anything about science don't understand that there are no stars when you are looking from space like this, because all the light coming from everywhere just makes the stars look black from outer space. Yeah, that's the ticket. Here we go. Look at this. Oh, it's just rolling over so fast. Look at that vicious hurricane just taunting us with its soft, cushy center. Oh, I mean, eye. Look at this. We're supposed to believe this is being transmitted from outer space in real time. My God, it's huge. It takes up almost the Earth's entire surface. Man, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe even pointing out that this video is fake is demeaning. Maybe people who can't realize that for themselves, I guess, just go on continuing to believe these things. It always amazes me how members of the truth community have fought so hard to preserve the official story about things like space, about things like our elections, by the way, which is crazy. They'll say that it's not fake. Why? Because they're worried about looking stupid to people who wore two masks in their car, because they want to brand themselves as very serious. Why? Serious for who? Who are you being serious for? Honestly. People aren't going to take us seriously anymore. This is a black hat psyop to make truthers look stupid. Okay, buddy. Well, here's the thing. I'm smarter than the people who wore two masks in their car, and I think you look retarded. Why do we have information gatekeepers? Why? Oh my God, somebody might believe the wrong thing. Hey, bro, you believe the wrong thing right now. You think they're taking pictures of the Earth from space as it spins with Hurricane Milton just swirling around. Look at its eye. Oh my God, man. They think we're going to really fly to Mars any moment. We're going to escape to Mars because man has changed the climate of Earth. Earth is going to become unsuitable for human habitation in our lifetimes, which means we're going to have to escape to Mars. And very serious people believe that real hard. Don't want to give up on viruses. Don't want to give up on space. Don't want to give up on dinosaurs. Don't want to give up on elections. Don't want to give up on the fact that their Bible might have been inverted. And that's really sad, man. And I don't mean to get into a big religious conversation, but the Schofield Bible was a direct attempt by the global regime to invert the meaning and purpose of the Bible. You can look it up on your own, SCOFIELD. Watch a bunch of videos. Maybe it doesn't resonate with you. And hey, maybe I'm just too ignorant about religion to understand. So be it if that's the case. And maybe I'll come to find out this was just yet another one of those things that I was wrong about. Although I don't think anybody denies the historical existence of the Schofield Bible. I mean, you could go pick one up in a store. I don't think anybody denies who it was written by. So really all we need to understand is what the intent of the writing was. And the intent can not only be gleaned by why it was written, the direct source. The intent can be better understood by the fact that there have been multiple editions. So the understandings of different parts of the Bible have been changed over time according to the needs of the agenda. That's a hint, a pretty good hint. And then you can just look directly at the text and say to yourself, does the meaning described here reflect the literal words on the page and their literal meaning? No. In fact, it's a convoluted and complicated inversion of that meaning. It's telling me that the passage to my eye means the exact opposite. What are you supposed to think at that point? Understanding the history, understanding various revisions, understanding the original intent, and understanding the words on the page. The only claim that book has is to expertise and to the fact that pastors around the country preach from that Bible. And you say, no, my pastor has done the work on this. Trust the experts. All right, yeah, trust the experts. Trust the experts. I just read a question from Catgirl88 in the chat. Catgirl88, ask me that in the second half of the show. And I guess we're in the second half of the show, technically. Ask me that once I'm done with this stuff, and I will absolutely answer your question. Okay? And if you can find me that clip that you're referring to, she's asking about a clip of the Elon Musk Tucker Carlson interview. If you can find me that clip, it would be even better because I'll play the clip and then I'll answer your question. I have not listened to that interview yet, so I haven't seen that clip. I don't particularly care that much about that interview. And I appreciate both of those men insofar as they are part of the information operation. If they are not part of that, then they are both evil. I appreciate Elon Musk to the extent that he is a defense contractor and fully on Donald Trump's side, and Donald Trump seems to be on his side. But if at some point in the future it strikes me as that being an improper interpretation, I will absolutely reverse that interpretation with no hesitation whatsoever and try to run in the opposite way as fast as possible. I mean, that's the best we can do. We are in a fog of war, a very, very strange information space. And let's get a little bit stranger now. So the comedian, I would say former comedian. He's not a former comedian. He is still a comedian. He was formerly a Hollywood comedian who got summarily kicked out of Hollywood before I did, awake long before I was awake. Owen Benjamin. He is, you might not agree with everything he says. You might not think he's funny. I don't really care. I don't care what people's interpretations of other people are. It's so strange that everybody's, oh, I don't like that guy. Oh, that guy's not even funny. Why is he not funny? Because you don't want to agree with the things he says? You think he's mean? You think he's off base? Okay. But he is funny. I mean, he is funny. This isn't even him, by the way. He just posted this on Telegram earlier today. So I haven't vetted this video. This video presents itself as a video from the BBC that looks like it was probably taken in the 90s or maybe early 2000s. If this video is authentic video from the BBC from that time, then what you see in it is kind of mind-blowing. And the visual is, as important as visuals are. So if you're just listening to audio, there is a BBC reporter stationed outside this, looks like some kind of electrical plant. It's got that look to it. And it is apparently a building that is run by NASA that shoots out a massive cloud of apparently water vapor that is to change the weather. Could all of this be a psyop? Yes. Could all of this have been created by AI and made to look like an old video from the BBC? Yes. Barring those possibilities, I'm not sure of any other possibilities why I would initially think to deny this thing. So are we getting tricked? Entirely possible, but let's have a look.
Don't worry if you can't hear what I'm saying. I couldn't even hear myself. This is the loudest sound you could possibly conceive. And as it turns out, the cleanest. Now, the most amazing thing is that cloud up there, which was generated by the engine, is just a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen. It's water vapor. And in about an hour's time, someone in Mississippi is going to get wet washing. It will actually rain.
I told you. It's raining. That's unbelievable. Oh. NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather.
NASA is playing God. It's making its own weather. Okay, so were we psyoped? Let's assume that we were not and that video is authentic. He's talking about Mississippi. He's talking about that thing making it possible to create rain in an hour is pretty quick. You're going to just shoot all this stuff out. It's water vapor, we're told, and it's going to create rain in an hour. Is that technology available? Does that exist? I mean, if it is and it does, that's 25 years old. Maybe someone in the chat has already vetted this sort of thing. I want to take a peek. Okay, I don't see anything. So maybe someone has. Maybe someone knows better than me. Maybe I'm making myself sound stupid right now. I don't think so. We're just analyzing a video. If that's possible, all you would have to believe is that there is more in there than just the stuff that makes water vapor. What sort of things could they deliver with clouds they make themselves? What kind of chemicals could they put in the water, put in our skin, in the soil? I had this thought yesterday, and I don't know why I haven't thought of it before. And I'm not sure I've ever heard it before. But it struck me as odd knowing as many liberals and as many liberal women as I knew in my former life. I thought, man, a lot of those women who are just the most liberal, feminist, god-awful people to deal with, they are still very into organic foods. They're very careful about what they put in their body and how they treat their body. Now, that doesn't, the lip injections and the Botox and the rest of it, that is aside. But in terms of the food, very particular about what goes in their body. And same thing when it comes to their beauty products, their soaps, whatever. All that's very, very, very important. But of course, they obviously went out and got the vaccines. They don't even understand that the reasons why they are focused on organic food and natural beauty products, those would be called conspiracy theories by them. They're saying the FDA doesn't protect this food well enough. It says it's okay for human consumption, I guess, but it's not for my precious body. And apparently they still trust the government. There's nothing that will make them not trust the government, even though they already don't trust the government about certain things. That is one of those dynamics to me that makes absolutely no sense and hit home for me, obviously, as it probably did for many of you in 2020. Because when I realized how wrong I had been, that it wasn't like I got things wrong. And I did, don't get me wrong. It wasn't only that I got things wrong. It was that I got things wrong because of how thoroughly I had been lied to and deceived. I believed a bunch of information as though it was the hard and fast truth about the world that could be proved objectively. I believed all of that was just taken for granted. And then my role was to figure out what all that meant and then express the right values and portray myself as the right kind of person. Now, I had very loving parents and I think a really good and solid upbringing. Now, I still went astray. So was part of that because of my upbringing? Probably, but I was raised in a very small town. So maybe I was just too enamored with big cities and different kinds of life. And so I strayed all on my own. It could be either, right? I had a pretty solid head on my shoulders, generally speaking. And still, it's all there. The false reality is right there. You can always just reach out and grab it. I don't know where I was going with that. Let's continue. Let me see. I have one more of these. Oh, but I was talking about the liberal women who are very organic, very into organic and natural products and still believe that the government, despite telling them that non-organic and non-natural products are totally fit for human consumption, they choose not to believe the government in those instances. So they are these same conspiracy theorists, they call us, they are unwilling to let go of certain things. When I realized how thoroughly I was lied to, I tried to let go of absolutely all of it. And I think that that should be a goal. I wrote something about this the other day on Truth Social. I'm not sure if I can find it quickly enough to make it worth sharing it. Let me see if I can remember well enough to shift myself immediately there. Perhaps not. But the point I was making was that we really should be ready to let go of any information gained from that false reality at any moment. We should be ready to let go of all of our beliefs about all of these things, because that which is true will present itself as true even when you're interfacing with a layer of false reality. So whether you're fully interfacing with reality prime or you are still subject to that false reality, all of those things from reality prime will still present themselves within the false reality. And when they conflict with the things in the false reality, that's when we develop these gaps in our understanding. And if there's too many of those, we're going to drive ourselves crazy. Okay? If we try to reconcile them and believe that both are true, we're going to drive ourselves crazy. And if we think the thing in the false reality must be true, and so we deny the thing in reality prime that still presents itself to us, well, that's going to create anxiety and depression. And understanding these dynamics, we can unwind these things. This is the process that I go through for myself, by the way. And I have done this for the entire time. And I'm not saying I'm 100% successful, by the way. I haven't certainly figured out all there is to figure out about myself and the problems of my past or my place in the world or the quote unquote universe, which I think is a stupid term now. My relationship with God, I don't have it all figured out. But there is a process that can get us closer to that. And it is a meticulous adherence to an epistemology that focuses on what is true in reality prime and make sure to never attribute to reality prime something that exists in the false reality. The better we can adhere to that, the more we will be interfacing with reality prime, and those things in the false reality, no matter what torment they cause us, cannot ultimately ruin us or defeat us unless we make them real in reality prime by giving ourselves over to them. So many people are at the point of beginning to call this stuff out on a much more public level and much more public platform. This is the gray zone. So the gray zone is Max Blumenthal. His father is Sidney Blumenthal. Sidney Blumenthal, if I'm not mistaken, was a Clinton ally. I could be wrong about that. Someone can correct me. He is a journalist. He is a regime-oriented journalist. Max Blumenthal might share some measure of that sort of leftism, and I don't think that Max Blumenthal is necessarily red-pilled, but I think that he is, and I think red-pilled is kind of stupid, but certainly not on our page about many, many things. And he thinks the news is real and all this stuff is real. His outlet is very left. Not in like the MSNBC way, though. It's not the corporate left so much. These are like real hate the government leftists. That doesn't really make sense. Maybe they don't realize they're not on the left and shouldn't continue supporting some of this nonsense. But hey, man, maybe this is just the communist movement and how the communist movement always takes over movements like anti-government movements like the America First movement. We are not anti-government because we are anti-government because we want the Constitution to be adhered to. It's clearly not that now. Our government is corrupt and illegitimate. But we don't want collectivism. And these people do want collectivism because they only see the world through collectivism. And maybe it's just the godlessness of it all and the nihilism that doesn't allow them to get through. I've talked about the same dynamic before when it comes to the postmodernists and how they are correctly observing the layers of false reality. But with the atheism, the nihilism, the scientism, and the materialism, they're not able to see anything else other than that. So they think there's just nothing, period. And hey, man, maybe there's just nothing, period. And I'm wrong, but I really don't think that that's the case. Anyhow, Matt Miller from the Gray Zone is in a foreign policy briefing with, his name's why can't I think of this guy's name right now? Ned, there's Jake Sullivan, Anthony Blinken. The security advisor is, man, look at that. My mind just craps out right in the middle of the show. I'm searching this because I'll be. There he is. Wait, no. Is it not Ned? It's this guy. I found the guy. I could just play it. Ned Price. That's what it is. Check this out.
Has financed a genocide in Gaza for the last year, and every day you're up there denying accountability for it. So, I mean, what gives you the right to lecture other countries on their moral?
So, if you have a policy question for me, I'm happy to take it. If you want to give a speech, there are plenty of places in Washington where you can give a speech.
Yeah, but people are sick of the bullshit in here. I mean, it is a genocide. You are abetting it, and you are risking nuclear war in Ukraine for this proxy war.
Plenty of other places to give a speech.
All right. I have reassessed my determination that is Ned Price. I think that guy is named Matt Miller. Biden foreign policy. Yes, that's what it is. Okay. Yes. That is a Biden foreign policy advisor, Matthew Miller. And that is the reporter from the Gray Zone absolutely lighting him up. Now, they're doing it on behalf of Gaza, believing that this whole conflict is more real than I believe it to be. I've said this many times. I think we're seeing reenactments of things while deep state assets are being taken out in various areas around the world, and it is being attributed to other causes. Okay. And I'm totally open to the fact that that is happening here as well. So I would be coming from a different place than that reporter from the Gray Zone. But let's listen to it one more time.
Just go ahead.
This administration has financed a genocide in Gaza for the last year, and every day you're up there denying accountability for it. So, I mean, what gives you the right to lecture other countries on their moral?
So if you have a policy.
It doesn't honestly matter whether he's right or I'm right about what the actual state of the world is right now. We know that these are things the regime has done over many decades. And we have certainly been shown evidence of them doing these things over many decades. So whether this question is specifically directed right now, you could generalize this question and stretch it out over this timeline, and it will always be a valid question to ask. You are financing genocide. What business do you have making moral assessments on the behavior of other nations? And that is exactly right. And then, of course, you can add to that the fact that Joe Biden ain't a real president. All right, so let's get to this. I'm just going to play one clip of this interview. This interview is very entertaining, and Trump says a bunch of interesting things. I'm not 100% on board with this interview because the guy's behavior is silly to the point of almost being disrespectful. And of course, Trump knows the environment that he's in, but he's talking to clowns. I guess that's enough of an introduction to the clip. This is really interesting. And Trump talks about how he weaves in and out of stories, which he has discussed a number of times at his rallies. He's kind of given this example before, but he gives it in an interesting way here. And then his comments that follow are really interesting. All of this is in the context of them asking, who does Trump think is trying to take him out? And you can watch them kind of beclown themselves, but this is their vibe and this is what their audience wants and expects. I guess everybody can have their own opinions about that.
I was saying before, though, that, I do a thing called a weave. Yeah. And there are those that are fair that say, this guy is so genius. And then others would say, oh, he rambled. I don't ramble. If I start a story, what you do is you weave things and you do it. You have to have certain things. You need an extraordinary memory because you have to come back to where you started.
Yes.
A weave is only good
They
if
don't
you
give
come
you credit
back.
for that.
Yeah, it's true.
That you could go all the way over here and then
I
get
can
back.
go so far here or there, and I can come back to exactly where I started. Now, someday when you don't come back to where you started,
you're Biden.
Then you say, no, but the weave is the way. When you're telling like a story, I was telling a story at a rally the other day in front of thousands of people, and I started off, and then
you were weaving
something in the story. I actually mentioned Air Force One. It was Air Force One was there, so I mentioned Air Force One, and then I said how I got $1.6 billion off the price of Air Force One. So, but then you have to come back to the story. Where was Air Force One taken you? So anyway, I do a weave. I call it the weave. And some people think it's so genius, but the bad people, what they say is, he was rambling. Yeah. It's not a ramble. There's no rambling.
This is a weave.
This is a weave. I call it the weave. Good name. I'm not sure. That's another name. We had fake news. We came up with lots of names.
Yeah.
But the weave is, I think we should make the weave a part of that stable.
Yeah, you really weaved right answering my question twice.
That's brilliant.
So
I don't even want to know the answer anymore.
I lost interest.
We'll weave back. Let's weave back to his question. Okay. This is where it started. So we'll weave back to it. I sort of hate answering it because I don't want to give any false identities. I don't want to do anything having to do with creating something that isn't there. Mm-hmm. You would look at Iran. Iran has an open threat out for me, and that's bad. And Biden, if he were a real president, if he were the kind of guy he should be, should say, if anybody shoots a former president who's now the leading candidate, even though he's leading against Democrats, we will bomb that country into oblivion. And it would stop. Mm-hmm. And that's been said before with some people. There have been people, I won't go.
I'm going to keep going with this in just a second, but you just heard him say if Biden was a real president, he would tell these other countries that if you keep going, we're going to bomb the shit out of you, and it would stop. Biden's not a real president. He's not telling other countries that. So if he was a real president, the implication would obviously be that Biden is essentially involved with the very real assassination attempts on Donald Trump. Biden's not a real president. Trump just said he was not a real president. It's also interesting that in his answer, he says he doesn't want to make a thing about who he thinks is behind these assassination attempts. Why not? It's all very interesting. Let's continue.
Into it, but there have been people that have been threatened in another party, even in the same party. It makes sense and probably happens pretty quickly. But in another party, it's hard for them to
cross the line,
to want to protect me. But it shouldn't be hard. Other people have protected other people, and what you have to inform those people is if they do it, the country will be blown to smithereens. The entire country will be blown to smithereens. And those threats go away because that's a really bad threat for a country. Forget about me. I'm an individual, but I represent something very important. It's true. That's I'm
going to play that again, just that last 5 seconds. Forget about me. I'm an individual, but I represent something really important. All the people who cannot stop saying that Donald Trump is a narcissist need to watch that and understand that Donald Trump is serious.
The country will be blown to smithereens. The entire country will be blown to smithereens. And those threats go away because that's a really bad threat for a country. Forget about me. I'm an individual, but I represent something very important. That's a really terrible threat. So, there are others that could be in that category. Look, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China at a level that no president took in anything. I had tariffs on China, took in hundreds of billions of dollars. They're still there. That without me, they wouldn't have those tariffs on. So you could say, but no, I think Iran would be the one.
All right, guys, let's take a break.
Anyhow, you can't respond that way and be a narcissist. It doesn't make any sense to think that he's a narcissist. He knows what the impact on the country would be, and he gave the exact right answer. As far as I'm concerned, man, it's his detractors at this point are really just unbelievable. We may learn something in the future, and I don't think we will. I think Donald Trump is a great man. I think he might be the greatest American who's ever lived, and it would break my heart to be wrong about it. But we have to consider that there's a possibility we are, at least. His detractors don't make that argument. They say that he's stupid or he's an egomaniac or a narcissist or all these things. Man, that ain't it. I don't know how, I really genuinely don't know how his detractors can still believe that what he's doing is possible if all of those characteristics that they attribute to him that were, by the way, fed into their system and through their mouths by regime media. I don't know how you can keep holding on to those views. Maybe people want to elevate themselves above Trump for some reason. They're really smart and Trump's stupid. Trump and all his supporters are stupid. I mean, as a former liberal, I know that that's at least part of what it is, especially for those people. Okay? They don't know anything about the world, not anything true. They've been taught an enormous amount of bullshit. And they believe all that bullshit is true. It just doesn't happen to be. And so they have that disconnect between what they believe in the false reality and what they experience and understand about reality prime. And they can't resolve that. And they know that they should trust the experts. So they know the experts are right. And they have to defend that viewpoint at all costs, because otherwise they realize they don't know anything. And so in their quest to defend that viewpoint and their view of themselves as the ones who are knowledgeable, the ones who know which experts to listen to, the ones who are right about all this stuff and what it means and how the world works, they would have to admit that they're totally wrong about all of that. They defend that viewpoint by trying to place themselves above Donald Trump, a billionaire who's famous as hell and somehow works his way through that to become president, be hated by all of the most powerful systems in the world at the same time, who are doing everything within their nearly unlimited power to destroy him, defeat all those people over and over and over and over and over again, still be standing through all this, and you're smarter than Donald Trump? How? Person who watches the Kardashians? It is mind-blowing. Cavalry 03 in the chat asks, what show was that interview on? That is the comedian Andrew Schultz's podcast. It's called Flagrant. Okay. All right. I think that's good and appropriate. The Weave, I think, is interesting. It's funny that there's a name for that now. The Weave. You go into and out of a story to a bunch of different points, and then you come all the way back around. As long as you are telling the whole truth the whole time and everything that you're saying is in service of the greater truth you're trying to convey, it's not very hard to get right back to where you were speaking from. So, as for Donald Trump being a liar, how does that work out? Kamala Harris can't work her way through a scripted question. These people, man. I mean, how many times do you need to see them reading the answers to questions that when they read the answer, all they're doing is repeating what you just saw last night on TV, and you think both people are the most genius people to ever live, liberals? How do you think you're smarter than Donald Trump? Somebody please answer. I feel like I'm still trapped in their cage of insanity. Oh, man. Sooner or later, I'm just going to head for the hills. Okay. It's like, oh, man. Figure out how to get yourself out, and then you have to figure out why no one else can get out. Get out, you retards. It's the godlessness, guys. It's the godlessness. I know. The most obvious answer. You're like, it can't be that one. Yeah, it's that one. All right. So Cat Girl asked earlier, I believe it was a question about UFOs in the Tucker and Elon interview. Okay, here we are. Elon's comments in the Tucker interview about UFOs being advanced military tech. So she sent through the Tucker Elon interview, and here it is. I'm supposed to go to, I believe she said 104. So I'm going to get up there and then I'll share the screen. I don't think I've ever. Oh, Tucker and your commercials. I wish I had Tucker commercials. I'm kidding. I wish I had zero commercials. And I don't think that I have the Bitcoin ad on the free version of my show. And I have the River Bitcoin and Gold Co. to buy gold. I think that both of those things are smart investments, and I do it myself. And if you are listening and understanding this for the first time, and you're interested in getting into those things, you can just go in the show notes and find the links. I have those. I don't believe that my show should ever have to survive on an ad basis. And just so you know, by the way, I have never received a dime from either of those companies. They are just there passively. You'll notice I don't promote them, because if money comes through there because people want to do that, all good, right? I think that these are wise things to invest in, which is why I invest in them. But otherwise, I don't need to say anything about it. People can come to that on their own. And if they want to use that link through my thing and buy through that, all good. But people don't do that very often, and they have long payment cycles. So I haven't received any money for those things. Okay. I've never received money in an ad for an ad that I have done in my entire time doing this in 4.5 years, except via Badlands, just to be fair. It's not that I'm like morally against ads for all companies. I'm just saying I don't think that an ad model is necessary to be successful doing this and live a reasonably comfortable middle-class life. It is possible to get rich, including in the model I use. I believe it's not possible to get rich using that model while you're censored. And it's not possible to get out of that model unless you're going to stop saying things that get you censored. And then if you do that and you're talented, you can get all the ad money you want. But that's not a realistic scenario for me. If you have 10,000 subscribers, which I don't, paying $5 a month, you're making $50,000 a month just off that. And then Substack takes whatever cut. That's a lot of money. I would live very comfortably like that. And that's with everyone who listens to me just deciding to pay the $5 a month. That's it. That's all it requires. People have to support the voices and the channels that they care about with their own money. And then you don't have to deal with ad models, as long as the creators and platforms shun ad models, which I've, to a large extent, been able to do. And I'm very, very happy and thankful for all you paid subscribers, because you make it so I can do this. But the ads are where the money is. And if you see these very refined ads, you should understand the person's making a lot of money. and they have the subscription model on top of that, and they are widely promoted by Twitter, by all the people that go on their shows, by everyone in normiedom, and everyone in the truth community who cannot stop slurping these TV characters. And if that sounds like I'm upset about the situation, I'm not. My frustration that you are detecting is the fact that we still see people who know better defending the people on television, and the idea that they are lying to millions of people at a time for their own good. That is what the enemy does. That is the enemy's entire thing. We don't join in the enemy's thing because that's joining the enemy. But everyone still supports people who join the enemy's thing. Why? I don't begrudge them their successes. Genuinely. Tucker is an affable guy. He conducts a good interview. He's a talented man. I don't begrudge him his success. He is promoted by the system. I and my friends are censored by the system. I begrudge the system for that. If I was trying to get rich, I would do my job in a different way. I'm trying to have that problem solved and not relent to that problem, because I believe when people relent, the problems that need solving don't get solved. So, but here's, sorry for that rant. Let's get to Tucker's commercials.
Tucker. This is the beginning of what we hope will be a long and happy partnership with Levels and Dr. Casey Means.
Do you believe there's a power higher than people?
Sorry. Casey Means and Callie Means might be wonderful people. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. might be a wonderful man. And I think that he probably is. And I hope that that Casey and Callie Means are doing the best thing they know how to do. Some of my people in those health-related communities think that they're kind of the normie version of what they're doing, just like Tucker is the normie version of what he's doing. And they're all part of the same information op and have been for the entire time. The entire time. Everyone should understand that. I was actually in 2021 contacted multiple times to potentially speak at a Robert F. Kennedy Jr. led event in Nashville, Tennessee. And I said, cool, I want to talk about the fact that our elections are stolen. And I never heard from them ever again. So are they doing the exact right thing that they should be doing the entire time? And they've always been just straight and narrow on the program, and the program is good despite the fact that it requires people to lie to millions and millions and millions of people at the same time? I guess I'm open to it. But Tucker just did an ad for another member of the same info op. Just to be clear what we just saw. Where did I do this? Oh, here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot we don't know. We don't know why does reality exist? Where did it come from? Where are the aliens? What questions should we ask that we don't even know to ask? So,
when you say what are the aliens,
where are the aliens? Oh. Like, why don't we see them? A lot of people think we see aliens, but I've not seen any evidence of aliens. We've got 6,000 satellites in orbit, and not once have we had to maneuver around an alien spacecraft. Right.
But on this Earth, the U.S. military's had to do a lot of maneuvering around objects they can't explain.
Well, unidentified flying objects is one thing, but there's always a bunch of classified programs that are underway of new aircraft and new missiles and things. So that are classified even within the military. So it's only the if you have the top secret compartmented clearance, would you know about this new program? So then, some pilot sees something moving fast and says, hey, I saw a UFO. I'm like, yeah, that was actually a new weapons program, but we can't tell you that. If you can guarantee that the split second I see any evidence of aliens, I will immediately post that on the X platform. And it'll probably be our number one post of all time.
That'll be your biggest day,
yes,
for sure.
I mean,
but to the question of a power beyond people, beyond our consciousness, a creator, where are you on that?
Well, we must have come from somewhere. So I guess that there must be some creator or creative force or something that caused our existence to come into being. What is the nature of that creator? That I think is unknown. At least I think it is. There's. I don't know of a definitive answer to that.
But it sounds like you're open.
Yes, I'm very open to, I'm driven by curiosity.
Yes.
And I'm trying to understand more about the nature of the universe. So my driving philosophy is to understand the meaning of life, or really what questions to ask if the meaning of life is not the right question. Like as Douglas Adams.
All right. I think we can probably leave it there. Let me see if I can find what your actual question was so that I can make sure I'm answering the right question. What do I make of Elon's comment in the Tucker interview about UFOs being advanced military tech? I think she just said that's the full UFO alien conversation for that interview. Okay, good. So I think Elon's answer sounds totally rational. That makes sense to me. I have never really bought into the alien thing. I guess I believed when I was an atheist, I believed that there was the logical necessity of aliens because we lived in a vast and infinite universe. And just the concept of infinity kind of implies that everything does exist somewhere, including many replications of ourselves. And I was a philosophy major in college, and we all wrote essentially what would be like a graduate thesis paper when we were seniors. And mine was on identity across possible worlds. So it's something that I've certainly thought about. And to the extent that the universe, quote unquote, would be infinite, then the likelihood that there's life somewhere else, I thought was a sure thing. But despite that, I didn't think that any of it had ever come to visit us. So this has never been a thing for me that I would have to get over one view or another. If I thought that it was extraordinarily well proven that we had been visited from another realm, I guess I would just have to accept it. I don't know what that kind of proof could be like. Now, it is entirely possible that there are other realms on whatever we're on or in whatever we're in. However it is you think about that. And if that life came to visit us, it might be like an alien representation. It would be legitimately from another world other than ours, but not a space alien. So an unidentified flying object that isn't from space, I don't think would make sense to call an unidentified flying object, right? I mean, it's some kind of craft that would then be from someplace down here. So I don't believe in space aliens. I am open to the possibility that there are other beings beyond what we know, in parts of our physical realm beyond what we know. And as I've said before, I also believe that there is a possibility that we are in some iteration of this existence. And, you know, we were talking about Einstein last night in relation to the movie Oppenheimer. And one of the famous Einstein quotes was that God does not play dice. Like, he's not leaving things to chance. My response to that is, well, God does play SimCity. And that we might all be in an iteration of God's presentation, I guess, so that he can observe his creation in a way that allows him to detect whether what he has created is capable of bringing itself closer to his image, if that makes sense. And what I imagine he doesn't want to observe would be us trying to systematically kill and destroy one another and lie to one another. He doesn't want to see us masturbating to porn all day or having sex all the time. He probably doesn't want to see people taking advantage of one another so that they can rack up the most points on the scoreboard that tells you how much fake money you have. And it's fake. That's the craziest thing, man. People give their whole life away, their whole soul away for something that they know they didn't earn and don't deserve. And that only means they get to spend more time engaging in various sorts of materialist masturbation. I can't imagine God would want to watch that. And if it got to the point where like 80% of everybody, or maybe it would have to be even worse. I mean, I guess he's got a lot of faith in us. Maybe he would wait until like the last 10 of us are like, hey, God, we're still not masturbating. And he just destroys everything else. Hey, man. I mean, that's kind of what the book says, ain't it? Oh, yeah. I don't know. I could see something like that. I don't think God would want to watch that stuff. And I think that we get these chances to try to right that ship. And maybe we're in positions to influence others and help them try to right that ship so that we're doing the right thing and we do just aim more in that direction. I mean, if there's a purpose of all of this, it is to aim in that direction. There cannot be any other purpose. And I say this as a person who hasn't been religious all my life, but who has played video games for most of my life. The only purpose of playing the video game is to win the video game. I mean, I guess you can have entertainment while you go along, but you're trying to win. And you do that by understanding what the purpose is and then trying to guide yourself to that purpose in the best way possible. That is what mastery is. And so we're doing that in life and treating it that way. We are attempting to master this thing, to do it the best way, to lead ourselves closer to him. And there's like a guide for that. And we are also born with an instinct toward it. So, yeah, man. I mean, that's how I look at it. And I've always looked at various parts of my life in that way. I just didn't understand that you have to do that like with life itself and with God, because you know, I had never had an experience with God. I had never had an experience with faith. I was an atheist. I was a very good atheist. And by that, I mean talented at arguing for atheism. But I would figure out where all the shortcuts were in order to conquer the system so that I could move on and do other things. My father said to me within the last couple of years, he remarked about how he thinks about that sometimes. I think I must have been talking to him about high school or college or whatever. I told him this. I told him I realized that teachers have egos and that teachers will focus on the things that they think are most important. And then on the test, they will ask questions about what they think is most important. And they will ask them within the set of things they've taught you in the way they've taught them to you. And so in college, you will get a book and the teacher will say, read this book, and then they will focus on very particular things in that book. So you don't actually need to read the book. Okay? And that saves a lot of time. It doesn't make you smarter. It doesn't make you understand what was in the book. But if you're just trying to conquer the system because you're moving on, then you would take those sorts of shortcuts. I did. When you figure out how to beat the system the easy way, doing it the hard way serves no purpose if all you're doing is graduating through systems. And that is what you do within the party of false decorum. You know, if I was doing it now, and in many ways, by the way, I have taken essentially like 16 college courses a semester for the last 4.5 years on all this shit. If you were doing it seriously, you would take the time to learn all the things because you would want to understand the material and master the skills that would be based on that material rather than just defeating the system to move on to the next step. It's just two different approaches to life. One of them, I'm not saying is the best approach. It's the best approach if you're trying to conquer the system. That is an understanding essentially gleaned from me playing video games as a kid. And that was in the days of like the PC Junior and early IBM computers. So you could actually go in and look at what the programs were. And you could understand how the system was designed to operate. And so you would just figure out all the cheats like, oh, I can find a system exploit here and here and here and here and here. And so if I exploit the system in all of these ways, I will win. Then I will win continuously. Then I will win by a lot all the time. And at that point, it becomes boring and you have to move on to something else. But I attempt to the best of my ability to approach my own life that way. And when you set the direction rather than conquering the system in your life to moving in the direction of God, while operating within that system, it makes it much, much harder to conquer the system, but it also makes the entire process so much more valuable. And that's what I found. That is why I love it, you know? So, but aliens, I don't know, man. I don't care whether UFOs are or aren't a psyop. I don't really care whether they are or are not real. I think that they're not. I might be making a mistake by saying that I don't care. It might be very important. A lot of people say they don't care whether the earth is round or flat or what it is. Okay. But the round earth makes people believe in the scientific version of the universe, which is obviously meant to deceive us. And we know the people who are delivering that information are the same ones who told us to wear 2 masks. We know that they can't actually back up the things they're saying with direct evidence because we can look at how they reach their conclusions. There is no direct evidence anywhere that the earth is 93 million miles away. It is the result of a math equation based on false assumptions. You don't have to understand the truth about the universe to understand that is how they tell us that thing. And when you understand that, you can look at a whole bunch more elements of that system and see, oh, these are all substantiated the exact same way. All of that is false. The only thing that makes it seem true is that it's internally consistent. Okay? So at that point, you have to give up everything but that which you can directly observe, because the observers who are doing it on your behalf are lying to you on purpose. At that point, you should realize that they're lying to you on purpose about something that matters a great deal in terms of how we view everything I was just talking about. To believe that we are a speck of dust in a black infinite void that is meaningless over the course of millions, if not billions of years, is an entirely different viewpoint than we are in a thing, in a place that we do not understand and cannot understand. And it seems like we're trapped here. And most of what we deal with is an overt push away from God and toward evil. And that is an understanding that makes you seek God. Being a speck in an infinite void does not make you seek God. In fact, it makes the entire thing feel meaningless. And to inject meaning into one's life, in order to be a good person, we assume that that meaning has to be found in other people and their flourishing. And so it is then easy to accept the agenda and the explanation of communists who tell you they're going to help everybody at the same time. All you have to do is give them power. Those are entirely different worldviews provoked by that singular understanding. I don't know that my understanding about reality and what we're dealing with, based on what I've just said, would be changed or affected by the fact that space aliens existed. Would I have to accept then their view on everything about the universe? No, I wouldn't. So, yeah, I don't know if that is as disruptive for me as it is for other people. At this point, if we were told that aliens were here and we could see them, all of us would and should assume immediately that that is a projection within the false reality, accomplished through whatever means of technology necessary. But we've seen it in, I think it is Dubai, maybe some of those projections they have. We can see drone swarms in China looking like a dragon. And maybe we're being shown those things in such ridiculous ways so that we won't fall for them in real life. That would be the sort of soft and slow disclosure that this process would indicate is happening right now. And to the extent that Project Bluebeam is real, to the extent that they would be motivated to get us back on the same page at one time with some sort of unexplainable crisis from another world that they couldn't control, is true, and that is definitely true, then it would be good that they showed us these projections, although some people just think they're more real. You have to wonder why media figures focus on these things so much. Tucker Carlson has talked about UFOs probably once a month or once every 2 months for years. Maybe that is part of this soft, slow disclosure effort. He's also talked about them being potentially demons, I think. Fallen angels, whatever it is. I don't remember what it was he called them. He believes they're beings from another realm. Maybe he's right. Maybe he's wrong. I certainly don't know. I am very much of the mindset at this point that I am prepared to play whatever cards are dealt before me. And I think that we have to get there. I don't certainly want bad things to happen. I would love if all of this could just be wrapped up in a day and then everyone would know who the bad guys are. Only the good guys would win at that point. That's not how it's going to go down. Okay. It's a long process and we all have to build toward it individually and encourage others to. And there's going to be a lot more shakeup, as we were talking about at the beginning. A lot of people are going to get hurt real bad. I see the process happening right now in my own life, in the lives of friends and family, people I love, people I used to know. There's some people falling apart out there because, and this weather modification thing, by the way, has got them messed up, because that's one of those things that you just cannot possibly believe isn't just natural. What's more natural than the weather? Well, it turns out lots of things. The Elon Musk, Tucker Carlson interview, by the way, somebody pointed this out. I did not come to this on my own, although I immediately recognized it as true and relevant. You saw the video there, Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson on a white backdrop, that backdrop down the floor. That's usually how things are done in a photo studio. That would have been a big, like 20-foot long roll of pristine white paper that would be rolled down to give that, that image of them just floating in space. It's not the corners of a wall. And it would go all the way under to present the same image as a floor. And you put the chairs down and the table down and they do the interview. And it gets dirty from people having walked around on it, people doing makeup and sound, and Elon and Tucker. And then at the end, they just cut that whole piece of paper off and pull the roll down again next time. And when that roll runs out, they replace it with a new one. So that's the sort of backdrop they're on. Same thing in The Matrix. That is Neo and Morpheus and the two leather chairs, this very odd deep image is what it says. I guess this is the back of a television, an old school television that they're watching. Radiola television. The Matrix is interesting. The Matrix is what brought me to reading. I always get it backwards. Simulacra and Simulation by Jean Baudrillard. Very, very interesting. Very interesting stuff, because we are dealing with a false reality that is projected on top of reality prime. And the postmodernists understood that to some degree and misunderstood it because they are godless nihilists. And so, of course, then they believed that there was no way out, which leads you to all sorts of terrible moral conclusions about what should be acceptable in this world. And that is how that moral degradation works. That's how you get yourself to carrying out heinous evil under the belief that you are carrying out great goods. Okay. I hope that answers your question. Sod This asked last night during Badlands Story Hour, and I said that I would get to it today. I'm not sure she has rewritten the question here again in the chat, but if you would like to, I will take a look as I get into this, but I will just preface it for now. She was asking about why I believe Donald Trump goes along with the fear-based narrative on all-out nuclear war. And he actually did mention it again today in that Andrew Schultz podcast. Saw this says she put it in the Substack, so I'm going there now. He does mention nuclear war on a regular basis. That has always been the greatest threat in all of mankind. The final threat after which there are no more threats. That is how it's been presented to us. If you guys haven't watched Badlands Story Hour yet, I really recommend it to you highly. I am very proud of that show. Burning Bright is a wonderful co-host. We go through some subject matter that I don't generally get to on my normal podcast, and I occasionally get to on this show. But it's in a framing that I think is relatively accessible because we're talking about movies. People can watch the scenes over and over again if they want, and try to go through the same thought process. We did a great one last night. I'm very proud of it on Oppenheimer. So if you want to hear more about what I think about that, by all means do it. The nuclear threat has always been presented as the greatest threat to all of mankind. It is possible that mankind could be utterly annihilated at any moment if something goes wrong. A human decision could eliminate all of humanity and everything on this earth. That is a grave existential threat. Also, existential threats are climate change, very deadly pandemics, AI that overwhelms us. Maybe it just did right there. Getting all messed up in the simulation. There are a great many existential crises. We've talked about these a number of times on the podcast, most particularly the episodes right after Oppenheimer came out in late July of 2023. So just go back to that period. There's a couple of episodes. In fact, let me just go ahead and find them for you. One of them on 7/24/23, ultra nuclear domestication. And then let me just see if I can find 7/26/23, the limit of mystery. Okay, I talk about these existential crises at length on both of those episodes. Let me get to Saad This's question. Whoa, there's a lot of comments today. Holy moly. I'm going to try to get through all these. Wow. Some of them are just responses and some of them are my responses. So that's reassuring. Saw this. Just adding in my rant from last night's story hour for discussion, why do you think Trump leans into the nuclear war fear narrative? He, RFK Jr., and Don Jr. talk a lot about the new nature of war and how we must seek peace to avoid a nuclear holocaust. As I said in my chat comment, I agree that this is intentional and designed to convince sane people to strive for peace, but I always prefer honest communication, which we rarely get anymore. I think deliberate obfuscation slows down the awakening. Sometimes a Pizzagate-sized hammer is necessary for in an information war. Thanks again for an outstanding show last night. It was straight fire. Thank you very much. Saw this. I have some doubts about how well Pizzagate worked. And I don't mean that it didn't work well, and I don't mean that it wasn't important. I go back and forth for myself about whether or not they can just unload everything on us all at once. I don't think that they can. And I think that if they did, that too many things might get ignored. It might be too easy to just go past all of it. The moment might happen and then be gone. And then the regime would just carry on and then everyone's a conspiracy theorist. Now, that's the most pessimistic I can be about that. Okay? Because I don't really believe that's what's happening. I believe that we are being lied to. And I've talked through this many times when it comes to these mainstream media figures, people like Tucker Carlson, maybe people like Elon Musk, and I think a very minimal outside chance that someone like Donald Trump. And I hope, obviously, that that's not true. I just said that earlier. So if we're not going to dump out information all the time, what can we morally expect from people? And I believe that what we can morally expect from them is that they be honest when a subject comes up. It doesn't mean that they have to tell us everything, but if something comes up, then they should be truthful in the words they're saying. Okay. Donald Trump serves a different position in the information war, I believe. His position is different than everyone else's. He gets more leeway than everyone else because whatever it is that Donald Trump has done, whatever strategy he has pursued, he himself, and the way he communicates and acts has been the single greatest catalyst for awakening in this period, outside of what God is doing in the world. I don't believe that God is doing, or that, I definitely don't believe God is doing it by accident. I don't believe that Trump is doing that by accident. I don't believe that he is waking people up by accident. I believe that his messaging and his behavior is geared toward that awakening. It doesn't matter if there is not one other ally among all of these TV characters who is a true ally. And again, I'm not trying to cast aspersions on these people, but if everyone from Tucker Carlson to Dan Bongino to Trump's close advisors to obviously everyone in Con Inc., all the people who are now the biggest Trump supporters ever, to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to Elon Musk, to Mike Pompeo and Mike Pence and Bill Barr and all the people who people think are still good guys. If all of them were bad guys, Trump could still be doing his thing and waking everybody else up and defeat all those bad guys. So none of that threatens me. And if Trump is waking everybody up to that point and then turns out to be a bad guy, then the people are still able to recognize that and respond to it. So that does not threaten me either. And in fact, I credit Trump as the catalyst for this awakening. So thinking that Trump is not different than these other people, to me, makes absolutely no sense. He is different. That is an exception because he has actually done the thing that people are giving everyone else the benefit of the doubt for doing when they're not the ones doing it. They might be leading people a little bit ahead. And maybe if 15 people pull people from all these different directions, then they finally get to Trump and Trump wakes them up the rest of the way. That's how it works. All good, man. I'm not trying to bum anybody out. I'm not trying to call anybody out. I'm trying to say there are wrong ways to going about doing this, and to listen to all the people who were on Fox News lying about a pandemic 4 years ago and think they're now our new best friends because they say nice things about Donald Trump is fucking insane. People still do it. People still do it. And those people get mad at me. How can you question J.D. Vance? How can I question J.D. Vance? J.D. Vance popped up 6 weeks ago. 3 months ago. Crazy, man. I don't have to like anybody. It's so nuts. If you don't like that man, nothing can stop what is coming unless you don't like that man. I don't even dislike J.D. Vance. I'm just questioning who he is because I don't know. And no one else does either. And he was a different guy before. He went right into politics, and while a politician got more MAGA. Okay? I mean, he was literally run by Peter Thiel, a globalist technocrat who may be America First now. Doesn't seem to be, but he might be. PayPal Mafia. That was the guy who ran J.D. Vance for his entire adult life. Peter Thiel's also gay, by the way, and Jewish. Does it matter? Maybe not. But it also might. Okay? It's entirely possible that he is committed to scientific materialism and the technocracy. That's entirely possible. And I'm not saying that that's an aspect of his Jewishness, but if he is a secular Jew who is involved with the Global Regime Project, they all seem to be pretty down with the technocratic future. So you have to wonder if there's some sort of relationship there. Many gay men can be easily compromised and have been easily compromised. So I can't just give them the benefit of the doubt because I want to be seen as a good person by others. These people are being granted a lot of power in society. Why would I just be like, yeah, you can have my power. I'll grovel before you. I'm not going to ask any questions about you and your reputation. It's crazy. What are we doing? Right? Trump is an exception from these people because Donald Trump has been the catalyst of the awakening. So I give Donald Trump the leeway to operate in the information space and the public relations space and the policy space that I think is required to bring that awakening along the proper timeline. And that's it. And if that is me rationalizing why it's okay for Donald Trump to lie, then so be it. All right? I think that Donald Trump is trying to bring people toward the truth, and he knows that people have been psyoped nonstop for their entire lives and brainwashed, fully brainwashed to the point of complete and utter control. You ever seen Josie and the Pussycats? Watch that movie. Subliminal messages in the music tell people what to do, what to buy, how to think, what to say. We have those campaigns right in front of our eyes on social media. We look at them. We see the effects. We see, hey, why is my friend saying lit all the time? I don't know why. Why are all these young women in Hollywood continually changing their style and always to the same thing? Why are they all writing #squad? Who's to say? But it can't be mind control, right? They don't have that kind of technology. It's not the AI and the algorithms just feeding them these things and controlling their behavior. Oh my God, that's the existential threat of AI. And it already happened. Isn't that amazing? Are we going to get through that existential threat? Yes, we are. But AI is not a threat in the future. It already happened. We are just being given some of the tools that have been used against us for a long time. And we can determine how those tools work. We can use them for ourselves. We can use them in service of the awakening. And then we can learn to recognize them as fake all the time so that they can never be used against us again. Which is why you got to call things fake when they're fake, rather than pretending that they're real, because the news wouldn't lie about this. Because Israel are our greatest ally. We can't say that the paragliding go-kart incident had something wrong with it. Look at these pictures from NASA. Crazy people, man. So the first question is Donald Trump lying when he talks about nuclear weapons? Well, if you are a member of the United States military, you have to basically toe the line of the commander-in-chief when it comes to what you can say and not say. And to the extent that a chain of command like that is in place right now, then there's going to be some message cohesion from top to bottom. And if there is necessary message cohesion in the lower levels, it would make sense that the person at the top, if his intentions were good, would not compromise those at the lower levels by going around and saying things that could cause circumstances at those lower levels that the people on our side at those lower levels would not be able to handle at the time. So I can imagine practical reasons why that would be necessary. And I think it's important to consider those. And beyond that, I mean, the method that I believe Donald Trump uses to get us out of these terrible beliefs that we have psyoped ourselves into is by accepting a part of the central narrative, right? So let's say, gosh, man, I haven't thought about this example in the first, like before doing this. And this is one of those things where if I was recording my normal show, I would press pause and think about this for 5 minutes without talking through it, or I would be pausing all along the way as I got started. But let's say an issue like abortion, religious concerns, concerns over women's bodies as their own domain, concerns over the child's bodies as their own domain, both of those beings with rights, concerns over, I guess we can call them, the concerns over the bodies are libertarian concerns in some way, concerns with not allowing the government to tell people what choices they're allowed to make for themselves, legitimate concerns. There are multiple elements of that issue. And we can go on and think about more, right? Safety concerns for women who make decisions we don't like and don't agree with and think are evil, but can't outlaw. All of those issues to get to the proper place on the abortion industry, another big issue, what they actually do. That includes the illegal immigration industry and the slave trade and how that intersects the abortion issue. So there are all these different issues that to make it a fully informed decision about that issue, we need to understand each and every one of those issues. And each and every one of those issues individually about abortion has to be hashed out in public and reach a proper conclusion before we are able to fully attack the range of issues that makes up that subject so that we can successfully lead that over the finish line into a better way that we view that. And part of that, maybe all of it should be, but at least part of it will be cultural incentives that the culture no longer approves of casual sex, which is something that I myself have engaged in, okay, to my own detriment and shame. But that cultural change will have to be made. A cultural change about the value of human life will have to be made. And that can intersect, by the way, you go back far enough, that's going to intersect that whole round earth, flat earth thing and where we stand in the universe. Because life is a whole lot more valuable if there's not an infinite universe. If we are each just here, all with our own desire and need and ability to serve God, and our responsibility to God to not mess up something he created in his image. Okay? So if we're going to get to those places, then we have to hash out all of these sub-issues first. And we never really have gotten the opportunity to do that because what we have is the attempt to make one or two or three aspects of that extraordinarily divisive so that we can divide the two sides of the uniparty and understand that each one of those sides has a far bigger agenda than actually solving this problem. They want to get elected. They want power. and they use this issue to gain power. They don't want to solve the issue because the existence of the issue is how they gain power. And they are able to set up the controlled opposition dynamic, which gives people options on where they're going to stand. And all of those positions within that are acceptable to the regime. So if we're going to get out of that, then we have to resolve all these sub-issues. And to do that, we have to have the conversations in public and figure out where people really stand and have these things argued about in public so that other people know this is the argument. Hey, everyone's changed on the trans thing, right? We all agreed that we actually do know who has the wee-wees and who has the hoo-has. Got confusing there for a while. There was a lot of cultural pressure and social pressure, including in Hollywood, man. You know, that's one of those things that you're like, shit, man, I guess if the science says it, must be true. I don't want to be mean to anybody, right? And you're like, that's never going to affect me. Well, it turns out it affects kids. And if you're a parent of a kid or you want a good society in the future, then it does affect you. I didn't think it affected me when I started hearing about that bullshit. That issue has been resolved in culture. And it's been resolved in the proper direction. Doesn't mean everybody knows it now. But there's no way that issue is ever going to turn around and go backwards. That's all we need to know about any one of these issues. It is already true that it is never turning around and going backwards when it comes to weather modification, and that just changed 4 days ago. It's never going in the other direction. It is never going to end up being that position. And this is true about all of these subjects. And I mean, this is something that I've thought about since 2020. And this is why I take the stances I do on all these subjects. As soon as I sense, oh, wait a second, everybody actually does understand this. I can feel this thing going in this direction. I better understand it too. And so I dig down to the bottom as far as I can go. And I find out there's actually absolutely nothing there. Then I'm coming out and telling all of you immediately, hey guys, I found there's actually nothing there. Turn around. Get out of here. This ain't the way. We have to resolve all of those sub-issues. We have to shift the directionality of that issue. Once it shifts, we can move on to other things and just keep hammering it home because we know what the arguments are. The arguments have been won. We have found all those winning positions because those positions have been resolved throughout culture. Everybody knows the truth of those positions because they have been argued about. And they can deny it. They can lie about it all they want, but they know the truth because the truth has been discerned by the public at large. Donald Trump is the catalyst to that process, and he hits every one of the sub-issues so that people eventually understand them. And so check, all across the board, right? If there were 10,000 spaces on a chalkboard and we needed to hit every one of those 10,000 to understand what all of this was, Trump just keeps checking off these little boxes again and again and again and again. And it's a frustrating and long process that causes a lot of division. I did an episode on this a couple months back called Divider in Chief. This is what I mean. There is model for that, right? Was Jesus divisive? Yes. We are going through that same sort of division. I am not calling Trump Jesus. We are going through that same sort of division. It matters which side people are on. On one side, people will go crazy. And so I believe that Donald Trump pursues that strategy intentionally. And I believe that whatever operation he is part of has determined with an extraordinary view of feedback. I didn't say that the right way. An extraordinary amount of feedback. The view they have is on all of our data and our reaction and how that data changes over time on given issues. So they know what the cultural belief the collective consciousness, they'll know what the collective consciousness believes at any given time. And once the collective consciousness has accepted certain things and come to the proper understandings, they can move forward. And so we hold ourselves back when we are gatekeeping, and the people gatekeeping are holding that process back. And if they have a better explanation for how the information stream works than I do, I would love to hear it. All I ever hear is, that's a black hat psyop to make us look stupid. Okay, well, grovel, and we'll be here forever. And, I can't control it. And this is the world we all have to live in. It would drive me crazy to get upset about it. I am trying to fix that problem. And if I determine at some point that problem is unfixable, and it's also no one's duty to fix it, I think it is our duty to fix it. But if I'm open to being wrong about that. If that happens, I will stop doing it and seek other things in my life. So, long story short, I think that is what Donald Trump is doing. And I think that it has some sort of foreign policy purpose that I'm not going to be totally privy to. I could guess at. I think it's probably necessary for that right now. I think it's necessary for people to understand that those leading them are willing to risk absolutely everything to remain in power. And that's what that symbolism suggests. I also think that bringing it up all the time and making people argue about it is what's going to get us to the point of understanding that there aren't nukes. They're not going to blow up the whole world at one time. They are going to commit systematic acts of war against the people of the world. And it's not about which country is doing bad things. It is the good twin, evil twin dynamic. The evil twin is going to wage war against us. And they don't actually want to wreck the world. They want to use the world without us in it. So, I'd prefer if he just told us exactly the answer all the time. It would make me a lot more comfortable. It makes all of us a lot more comfortable when we have discovered the answers and others haven't. And then the people that we look to are not telling us those answers. But it's not his job to give us all the answers. That is not the president's job. It's not Donald Trump's job as a man. It's just not. It's our job to get the answers and our job to tell other people the answers and to demand that other people tell the truth as we tell the truth to them. I think that's it. And we can demand the truth from Donald Trump. Donald Trump will tell us the truth. I have no doubt about that as soon as we're ready. And we're not ready because we don't give the signals that we are ready. We give the signals that we want the hose again, which is why people grovel before the election thing. And they say, Trump says. Okay, well, I can make the argument that he says other things. Okay. And I can make the argument that Trump says as a justification is not a justification for anything. It is a reliance on false authority. Now, I'm not saying that Donald Trump is misleading us, and I'm not questioning Donald Trump's authority. I'm saying false authority is that person referring to that person is not a suitable proxy for actually having an answer. That person says so is the same as trust the experts. Trust the experts is not only wrong because of those particular experts and their agenda and that they're lying to you. Trust the experts is wrong because it doesn't guarantee any real answer. The answer doesn't come from what another person says. If people know a lot of things about a subject, ask them a lot of questions about a subject. That is totally appropriate. And we can learn from people if they are willing to answer our questions and make it make sense to us in a very normal way. The idea that normal people cannot understand complicated subjects is abominable to me. It is totally wrong. Okay? I know our brains have been fucked with. I know we've been brainwashed. I know that people have been psychologically abused en masse. But our brains are entirely capable of it. Now, some people have actual mental problems and illnesses or disease or, however you want to describe it, and they cannot learn the same way. But people, by and large, are totally capable of understanding what is happening. Ron says Q equals Operation Trust, or at best, they copied the plan, but this time with good intentions this time. Is that in response to something? Oh, yeah, it is in response to something. Okay, let's go through. I'm going to try to go quickly through these because I did not expect this to be this long today. I hope you guys are still hanging with me. eGrab4 in the chat, Rumble Rant for $5 says, watch the South Park episode with the sea monkeys. That's essentially what they do to us and how they view us. very interesting. I don't recall that episode right offhand. And that is a very strange experience for me when it comes to South Park. Back to these questions. Robin says, Chris, do you think this movie /op is going to come to a moment of truth on November 5th? I'm sad to say none of my friends are any more awake or engaged in seeing the unreality of their daily lives than they were 4 years ago. This slow exposure of truth isn't really working. The villagers are digging in and rejecting the idea of responsibility for themselves. It's extremely depressing dealing with friends that are refusing to engage in any conversation that involves the unreality of daily life. They don't care that no one seems to be in control of our government. The weather is being manipulated. The justice system is totally corrupt and don't believe child trafficking is being done on a large scale. Do you think the Great Awakening is really waking up the majority of average villagers? Thanks for your dose of reality daily, I think is what she meant to type. All right, Robin. I'm going to answer this question in what I genuinely believe to be true. I don't know your situation. I don't know how your relationships with these people are. I don't mean to put you off in any way or blame you in any way. I'm just going to say the thing the way I understand it for myself. I, in many ways, was fortunate to have the experience of people trying to destroy my life and reputation in front of friendships and relationships, both business and personal, that I had developed for nearly 20 years. Because what that did immediately was show me who my actual friends were, because they would stick up for me and they would reach out to me and they would tell me, hey, man, I understand what you're doing. Okay. So in some sense, I was fortunate because in many of those relationships, they simply disappeared and I never had to deal with them in one way or another. And those people are just not in my life now. And in many ways, that is only a weight off my shoulders because in my role in Hollywood, I was essentially catering to thousands of people all the time and having to maintain some sort of informed acquaintance with them. And that is a lot. Okay. Especially when you're single and you're dating and you're trying to do all these different things and make other businesses besides my main thing successful. It was just a lot of relationships to maintain, a lot of people's problems to deal with, a lot of people to cater to and be nice to, even though you don't like them. And so a lot of that was eliminated for me. Then there were the people who were kind of overtly in opposition to me, and those are relatively easy to let go of. But then there are the people who remain in your life or attempt to and argue with you all the time. Now, with all of those people, it did not matter what my relationship with them was. As soon as they were disrespectful to me, I ended my relationship with them. And people didn't do that. Now, I understand when it's your family member, it's real tough. If it's your husband or your wife, because you love that person. And if you wake up in the process, it's hard because that person's the same and you're the one who's different. If you love that person, you got to make different concessions than what I had to deal with. But I have family members who thought I went crazy, and I just have to accept that and not talk to them anymore, except about, stay in touch kind of things. And I would tell the truth when I was asked. And otherwise, there was a lot of distance in those relationships over the past few years. That's unfortunate. But there was no way that I was going to change who I was or what I was going to say. And there was no way that I was going to not respond to the things that are being put in front of me. And I didn't want it to ever get to a place of having to deal with the disrespect. So I stepped way back and I let those people drift out of my life. And some people think that that's dark or sad. And there's an element of that, I guess. But also that is what allows them to reach out to me at their own speed and allow them in some way to save face. if I had been arguing back and forth with all these people for the last few years, they are now making it part of their life to be in a contest with me about who's right, which means they are even less likely, because of the incentive and punishment structure within our relationship, they are less likely to admit they're wrong. And for people that I really care about, like my family members, I provided them the opportunity to listen to the things I was saying at any time they wanted to say them. And then I stepped back out of those relationships and have remained that way to a large degree. And we are able to have conversations now that are purely rational. And if they don't agree with me, I say, hey, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. Believe whatever you want. This is how I see this. I put in 15 hours a day, and I have for 4.5 years now, almost every day. So if you think you understand these situations better than me, okay. But if that's the case, why can't you answer any of the questions I have about these situations? Now, Robin, the thing is, it sounds like you want these people to believe certain things that you have told them. And that ain't how it works, in my view. And I don't think that you're helping yourself by telling them these things. They have already heard these things from you. Say the truth. Make sure they know what you believe the truth to be, that it has gotten in their ears. Then just let it rattle around for a while. And eventually they'll come to find, oh, hey, yeah, maybe that person who tells me they love me was actually right and looking out for my best interests instead of arguing with me. So, I mean, that's the best advice I have for you. I think that we can witness the awakening happening. My concern is that it gets steered off course by the information gatekeepers and the people in the info op I described before, because they are still hewing very close to where we are, and they can break people off very easily to the sort of comfort that the regime provides and the image of success that they believe they have been promised by various people within the truth community, up to and including Donald Trump himself. It is going to be very easy post November 5th for that Con Inc. info op to fake success on all levels and lead people immediately into a great success that still happens to exist within the controlled opposition dynamic of the regime. And if I have a fear, it is that I don't happen to have that fear, but it is something I am cautious about. Okay? Maybe that's the best way to say it. I am not actively fearing that possibility, although I do recognize it as a possibility. And I think it is our job to avoid that possibility, which is why we have to demand better in order to get better, and why we have to demand honesty all the time. Daniel says, hey, Chris, what did you think? Oh, cool. I was just with the Substack screen up the whole time. Oh, well. Hey, that rant was okay, but it's going to suck on video. I'm so unprofessional. I was at the dentist earlier today, and the hygienist had an amazing name for, she said, this is what she said. She said, me and my friends only watch garage news now. Like only the people doing this stuff like from their garage. I absolutely loved it. That lady was fantastic, by the way. Okay, next question. Daniel asks or says, hey, Chris, what did you think of the rug pull radio interview with Mitchell Hodel last Thursday? I thought it was great. Young minds waking up. Just wanted to say thanks. I answered this question on there yesterday, actually, or this morning, not realizing that it was in the thread for this podcast. I didn't watch that interview. Sadly, I don't have a hell of a lot of time to listen to all of the stuff that I would like to listen to. I love G Money and Patriots in Progress. I am a proponent of Bitcoin, but I did not have a chance to listen to that. So I hope it was great. They do a great job. The Michael Saylor interview, I think everyone should listen to. Bjorn again says, thought Monday was pure fire. Chris, thank you. No, thank you. if you can fit it in, heard you once mention the Beatles as an op. Recently watched a Queen clip. Nothing really matters to me. Thought of your Beatles mention. Obviously know nothing of your background in music. I think you said something like you had listened to 1,000 or maybe thousands, can't remember, bands. Please share more of your take on the music industry and its role in our current situation. Man, I could do an entire thing on this. I'm almost tempted to say, let's wait and do this next week. How about this? Let me answer it in brief right now. And if you have further questions or would like to hear me discuss it further, I am absolutely down to do that. But let's do that last week because I could probably talk about this for an hour. The Beatles, I believe, are an op. I've always said that. It is pretty clear to me that they're an op. I imagine at this point, it's probably pretty clear to most of you that they're an op. They were our first boy band. They served the same purpose as New Kids on the Block or Backstreet Boys or NSYNC. I enjoy Motown, so sadly, it makes me sad to say this, but I think Motown was the same way, except black, and I think that they did that again with hip-hop, with rap, and especially gangster rap in the early 90s. And I think all of these are ops. And I think that what they do is just inculcate really terrible values in the youth. All You Need Is Love is a horrific song of terrible values. Imagine is a horrific song with terrible values. I think a lot of the Beatles music is like that. I also don't think the music is good, but that's me. I'm not saying there's no song that I like. I just think that some of it is like reprehensible. I think it's gross. I think it's ridiculous that it is like culturally required to be in the party of false decorum that everybody agrees the Beatles are the greatest band of all time. That is insane. Which one of the Beatles was the greatest at anything? None of them. Ringo Starr is not even a good drummer, much less the greatest. Are the guitars great? Is the bass great? Is the singing great? None of it's great. So, I don't know. I think people have nostalgia for an era, nostalgia for the coming of age that era brought and all the psyops that went along with it. You know, an album called Revolution. It's not a psyop. I, by the way, am the one who made the Beatles Revolution book and how that's the basis for the Devolution artwork. I made that art. That was me who did that for John back in 2021 or 2022. I think it was 2021. So, yeah, I think all that's an op. Queen certainly seems like an op. I don't pay enough attention. I never paid enough attention to Queen to go deeply into the stories surrounding that and Freddie Mercury being gay and dying from AIDS or whatever. Who knows, right? I mean, Fauci did AIDS too, so we have to go layers deep on that. I don't feel like going layers deep on that today, and I'm not sure I'm ultimately the right one to do it. Nothing really matters to me, certainly. There's a lot of really bleak music out there, and I've spent a lot of my life listening to fairly bleak music. I like when things feel happy and sad at the same time. My favorite musical genre was the post-hardcore genre, like Deftones and other music that has come off that. I'm a huge fan of Tool. I was a huge fan of Pearl Jam until I realized that Eddie Vedder's probably compromised and now just is overtly awful. And it makes me really sad to say that. I'm a huge fan of a band called Sunny Day Real Estate. I'm a huge fan of a band called Glassjaw. I've recommended many times an album from 2022 by a band called Birds in Row, which are these three young French dudes, like in their early 30s, kind of hipster looking. They are a punk band, and their album, Grease Klein, I think I'm saying that, or Grease Klein, is one of the greatest albums I have ever heard in my life. I have listened to it most days for over 2 years. I am blown away by it, not only by the outstanding musicianship, but also by the incredible lyrics. And I also believe that they woke up post-COVID and have And I believe that we share a collection of experiences. That is what I gleaned from their work. I believe that they were not where they were spiritually or politically before 2020 and on their prior albums, although they are exceptional. I was one of the main people at three of, I guess you could say, well, maybe you could say 4 of, the premier LA nightlife venues that were prominent in the live music scene. So there are live music clubs like the Troubadour is a famous one in Los Angeles, or the Wiltern is a famous theater. And then you've got the Greek Theater, which is, a small outdoor amphitheater. And then you have the Hollywood Bowl, which is a big outdoor amphitheater. And then you have the arenas like the Staples Center and whatever that new thing is in Inglewood. Oh, they still call it the Forum. And then you have the big stadiums. I've been to concerts, countless concerts in all of those environments, but all of those are public venues open to the public where you buy tickets and you go. And then, of course, there are VIP areas and you can get free tickets and all those things. And through my work and my friendships and my relationships, I had all of that access to all of those things. In 2017, I went to no fewer, I think, than 100 concerts. I was at a concert almost every night with extraordinary access, around friends, right up close to the bands, meeting the bands, all those things. That was just how my life was. And all that was wonderful. But none of that is what I was talking about as far as me and my working and the number of bands that I have seen. Okay, that is all above and beyond what I'm about to describe. There were 4 clubs in particular where we were entirely exclusive in, and by exclusive, I mean there is a guest list. Actually, in the 4th one, we didn't have a guest list except for special events. That one was more open to the public, but it was still restricted in some sense at the door. All of these were Hollywood nightlife venues where people would go out for the nightlife. There wasn't always live music. There were different kinds of performances. At certain places, there would be burlesque. We would occasionally have comedians, cover bands. What else? I'm trying to think of other acts that we might have had. But we also had a number of nationally touring artists and historically great artists. We had Stevie Wonder. We had Prince. There were Gary Clark Jr. is a big one. There were acts that would come in. The record labels would book venues and they would do their events at our venues because our venues were premier music events. And one of my best friends designed a couple of these venues. Some other great friends of mine designed the other ones. All a very intimate thing. We're talking tops 300 to 400 people watching a performance. Okay. All of them essentially, in most of these cases, hand selected. And we had all these great up and coming bands. Record labels would send us people. Bruno Mars signed his record deal after performing with Atlantic, I think at the time. I don't know who he's with now. And I'm pretty sure it was Atlantic then. After they came to watch him perform at one of our venues. So many big artists played our venues before they became big artists. So many big artists played our venues. So many wonderful up-and-coming artists who never got big in a public sense played our venues. Sometimes there would be 3 or 4 or 5 a night. And so if I'm doing a venue 2 or 3 nights a week, and there are 3 bands there every night I'm there, or 2 nights a week, or 2 bands, or whatever it was, you're going to see a whole lot of bands really fast. And so I saw hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bands over those years. And I think that fully explains that part. I don't think we need to go deep on Beatles or Queen. So I'm going to keep going. And look at that. I just left the screen up once again the whole time. Terrible at this. I'm terrible at this. My own job. It has been nearly 3 hours now. Good Lord. I'm sorry, guys. Thanks for hanging out. I hope this is still interesting. I can't believe how long this is. Chris, ever hear of a local LA band called Boy Hits Car? Lead guitar was my son. Q of Swords 3, $20. That's a Rumble rant. Thank you very much for the Rumble rant. That is very cool. I really do feel like I have heard of them. I would have to look it up. And I don't want to like, should I do that? You can tell me if I should do that or if you want to send me a link. I may well be familiar with them. And if I wouldn't be surprised if a band with some notoriety in Los Angeles played one of our spots between, I don't know, 2008 and 2020. I mean, my last venue, we had Green Day play a private show within the last few months before the whole thing ended from COVID. We had like the Pixies play, massive DJs. I mean, yeah, if you're a music fan, I had a very blessed existence for a good decade plus based on, again, my work and my relationships. And it was wonderful. It's one of the things I miss the most about not being in that life or lifestyle any longer. Ron says, yeah, when I went down the Schofield study Bible hole, his notes were a bastardization of the Bible. However, I have yet to find any scripture in his Bibles being changed. He was given a mandate and task to think for everyone else, and ergo influencing the elect by persuasion, the silver-tongued serpent. That is an entirely valid observation, and I think you are absolutely right. And I think that I should, be sure to include that in my conversation, the one I had before. I think that is entirely valid. Daily Weimar actually describes them quite well. Thank you very much. Fake, not game above. I didn't see a game. Oh, here it is. They couldn't make the acting any more obvious with the fake president at the fake White House. Come on now. Every normie we knew, oh gosh, sorry. I was trying to, you wrote it entirely correctly, and I was trying to correct what I thought was a misspelling. Every norm we ever knew to be true is absolutely shattered. And that is the purpose of all this. You remember them whining about my institutions. No, the purpose, Donald Trump's purpose, was to come in and shatter our reverence for those institutions. And that includes the Secret Service. Take that as you will. My husband, who is an amazing man, says Mo New, a wonderful provider. He works his butt off so that I can stay home and educate our children. Kudos to you guys, by the way. You're doing it right. Father and my best, amazing father, wonderful provider, father, and my best friend. He has just this past week or two really been allowing himself to know what is happening. He already knew it, but somehow was able to keep it compartmentalized and focus on his work and taking care of us. However, we became stranded in Nashville. Gosh, I'm sorry. For the first 4 days of the storm, and we were completely helpless. We had to depend solely on the grace of God and the kindness of our neighbors in the woods to get home. Since we've been back, we have sent supplies out west, but my husband feels helpless and has been watching all the conspiracy videos and just getting beat down. He is blackpilling pretty hard. Because of his faith in God, I know he'll come out of it. Dooming is not in his nature. But pray for those waking up at this late date. It's a lot to swallow all at once. I am in 100% agreement with you, Mo New. I think that is a lovely story. Cheers to your husband for being that devoted, a husband and father that he focused in and just bore down and did what he had to do for all of you. I can do nothing but sympathize with all of the families in that situation. I think it is heroic what men in that position have done. And unfortunately, the downside of avoiding something important for a long time is that it's coming back to get you sooner or later. And so, he's prepared. You're there for him. It's your time to be strong. And I'm sure that you guys will make it through and the clouds will part. And I think we're on the verge of an American Renaissance. I've said that for a long time. I have nothing but hope and optimism about this period. So I know you guys are going to pull through. Prayers to you. I think you're handling it well. And Mo continued, ugh. Here in the South, Schofield is apparently the only Bible allowed, and it has to be the King James Version. It's so awful. It amazes me that you, who were an atheist 5 minutes ago, can already see through that psyop. Perhaps that fact actually helps. And yes, I believe that fact does help, because I have heard for so long. And part of why I was an atheist is because we have that inclination to the thing being immoral. And when you know what the inversion is, when my entire thing is attempting to be able to spot these inversions whenever I find them, wherever I can find them, and then act on them and respond to them properly. And so when I see the inversions of what we were taught was the meaning of the Bible, it seems that there must be some explanation for that. And you can just look through the historical record and find, yes, there is an explanation for that. This is what it is. I mean, all the people who think that the world is ending make no sense to me. It seems like we are directly on the path back to the right place. And I'm open to being wrong about that, as I've said before. And hey, man, I think about that a lot, to tell you the truth. One thing that I think about a lot is if there is a chance we are not on the right path, then what we should be doing to make sure we are on the right path is to be focused on all the most important things first. Now, in terms of our worldly existence, I am pretty sure that I am doing that. In terms of our otherworldly existence, our greater existence, our relationship with God, I'm not sure I'm doing that all the time. And I wonder if I am missing something and neglecting something there in that mix, while understanding that I also have duties and responsibilities in this world that I need to attend to, and trying to master the system of this world so that I can spend more time looking up. And I don't know if I have that mix correct. Ron says Q equals Operation Trust, or at best they copied the plan, but this time with good intentions this time. Yeah, I get that there's some level of sarcasm to that. And, you know, you seem to express this position often. I'm not sure you're right about that. It seems a little doomy to me. I believe that the Q operation, no matter what it was set up to do, and no matter what people are still attempting to use it to do, woke up too many people to get that genie back in the bottle. It doesn't mean that people aren't trying to lead us back there. I already kind of went through this before, so I don't mean to belabor the point. But I don't see that problem yet. And what I mean by that is there will become a moment, and maybe you've already had this moment, to be fair. Maybe I'm just late on the uptake here. I believe there will come a moment where that becomes clear, and I don't think we've reached that moment yet. I am cautious and looking out for that moment. So I believe I have prepared myself to sense it. And I'm not saying I never am inclined to consider it. I am. Particularly watching the focus of many of my peers on fake elections. That concerns me. And the fact that the people who would then be in that op are leading their focus toward those fake elections. But I think we're okay. And I don't think that that is the issue you believe it is at this point. And I think that you just enjoyed my Mohap joke earlier. Okay. I guess I ranted with the Substack on screen each and every time. So if I ever think of capturing that content on its own and posting that, it'll be bad and blurry. All right, guys. I think that I got to the Rumble rants. I think I hit a bunch of the questions. We are already over 3 hours. So I am going to wrap this up regardless if I did or didn't. Thank you all very much for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed the Wednesday live stream. Thank you for being paid subscribers to my podcast. Again, I'm very grateful for that. It allows me to do this show, and it doesn't only allow me to do this show, it allows me to do this show in this way. Okay, and with that, I will bid you adieu. I will see you next week. And as for my podcast, I will be back tomorrow at the same reasonable time on the same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic. And Joe Biden will never be president.
Well,
what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
Ah!
Can we stop this cruel game and allow the boy to keep one shred of dignity? For God's sakes, I can't stand to see him in all this pain. You vicious bastards! Let him move in with you. Is it so bad to see somebody happy? So just let him move in. For the love of God, let the boy move in with you. Good Lord.
And I will not let you down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com, and for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the range.